It's Friday night. There's a lot to get into here in the world of sports, and we're behind, and we're going to try to come up here quicker than a New York minute to catch up and talk about all the latest happenings here. Certainly a lot going on in the world of wrestling and NFL draft, NBA, NHL playoffs. We'll even talk some MLB and all of that in the second half of the show. But to join me in the first half of the show here to talk about what happened in the WWE draft, what is going on with Tony Khan, has he lost his mind, and where else in the world of wrestling should we go with three of my guys, three Hall of Famers? He is back by popular demand. His name is Armageddon Shane Davidson. Always love having the size, strength, and muscles of Sportswire Radio. Also two-time Hall of Famer, the real Craven, Coach Chris Craven, and also he is the host of the Hockey Fan Chat. He dabbled a little bit in the world of wrestling also, and he is our senior wrestling analyst, Mr. Randy Dillon. And fellas, happy Friday, and how you doing tonight?
Doing well. How
got off work.
That's always a good thing, right? To get off work, got to be good. TGIF, got off work, and, got to be feeling good then.
Oh, yeah. Not really. I got to be back here tomorrow.
Well, but obviously, okay, well, we'll certainly try to put things on a positive twist here, but maybe I'll talk about the draft in a little while. But I want to ask, I know Coach probably just missed something that has obviously been a hot topic this week on not only here on this platform, but I'm sure all across the wrestling world, is Tony Khan. Tony Khan, what an interesting guy, because he said, gentlemen, for all these years that he wasn't going to be an on-screen character, he wasn't going to get involved, he was going to let the professionals handle things, and what do I see closing out AEW Dynamite? Tony Khan laying on the ground, and I see him during the NFL draft with a neck brace on. And, what do you make of this? I mean, desperation, I suppose. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Dynamite's under 700,000 views, and is what's going to save AEW and AEW Dynamite is now rather Tony Khan being an on-screen character. And where do we start with that, gentlemen?
Tom,
I told you before, he's a mark. It was only a matter of time.
Oh, it was a matter of time, all right. I mean, he certainly came and straight out of the playbook of what's been in yesteryear, and to me, everything he said has been thrown out the window all these years.
Yeah, Tom, you know what? The funny thing is, this is definitely desperate, because I said it, I tweeted out, it has potential to be a good storyline, but the fact is how it's the elite who turned on Tony Khan, who pretty much he's gone to bat and say, I picked you guys over CM Punk, disputed him over Cody Rhodes. And these are the guys turning. It has the alliance angle story where these guys, they're not going to do anything. It's more of a story. The one thing I think with them doing this story was Tony Khan, right? It's absolutely desperate. They're trying everything. Is this the one thing you can get people attention? I don't know if you're going to say WWE, his comment today, WWE is their Pepsi and WWE is someone else, I can't remember, but it's just like, what are you doing? You have something good here, but all you can talk about is how you think you're better than W and you're not, and your product is really fumble.
I'm going to bring it because he's been a part of a major company, so he understands what goes on. He's been in companies that have gotten big amount of views, and he's been a part as a main player in the past. So I'm going to come back to him in a second. But Randy, I got to ask you, you said something interesting. We talked about this off the air last night. But AEW's viewership continues to drop. I mean, is there going to be a point where it just further consolidates? I mean, are we talking about 500,000 viewers? Are we talking about 600,000? I mean, right now we're at 683, right, for Dynamite. Punk got them back to 817, but they haven't broke 900 or around 900 since Sting. That's now almost 2 months, and that was really an aberration. So you're talking about realistically, AEW's been, for the most part, averaging, if you want to average it out the last, let's say, 3 or 4 months, probably in the ballpark of 780 to like 810,000 viewers. With now, it's dropping. So those numbers are going to drop further. So how far can AEW really fall in terms of, A, the product, but most importantly, the viewership?
Well, apparently to Dave Velzer, there was playoffs the other night, so that's fine. They're still up there. That's the thing I don't understand. Someone made a good point on Twitter on their tweet. The talent AEW paying for Okada, for Ospreay, or now Mercedes Moné, and they can't get, and their viewership just keeps dropping.
And they brought Adam 7 months ago. I mean, you spent something on him.
You got Adam Copeland. You made You made Swerve this big star. You had the likes of Samoan Joe. You tried to do everything you can with Tony Storm. It's like
Gianna Perazzo, you brought in at the beginning of the year. I mean, they signed a lot of people, but yet it seems that the product is just dropping and the viewership is dropping.
And you know what, Tom? The thing I find most, ever since Sting left, their viewership has dropped even more. Because I think Sting was that one saving grace where at least you could see a guy like him who was on his final hurrah tour. Now it just keeps going down and down.
All right, fair enough. And thank you for that.
Next thing you know, you'll see Tony Khan win the title.
You know what? He's a part of the main event storyline, and Bischoff had a couple thoughts on that, and I'll come back to that shortly. But Shane Davidson, I want to ask you a question on this, because obviously you've been a part of a company that is certainly well known. You've been a part of a company that gets thousands of views on YouTube, and is certainly a company that's talked about quite a bit. So from your vantage point, you've been in a locker room that's a well-known company, and so you understand. You've also been a main player. What's the psyche you think of the talent in that locker room right now in AEW? When you see all the things, you see the viewership, you see the fighting, this whole thing with Punk in the video. Jack Perry comes back. I mean, you've been in this rodeo around a few times in different locker rooms, in a major company especially. What do you think is going on in the minds of that locker room right now?
My personal opinion, this is just my opinion.
Okay.
I personally think that every single piece of talent that they have in the AEW locker room has gone to waste. They're gone to waste. Because for the simple fact, it's literally a WCW runaround. It's the cycle repeats itself over and over and over again. Just like with WCW, AEW's numbers, they're plummeting.
Right.
I'll say this. I think people like Jericho and Moxley and Big Show and Henry and Edge and people that have been around enough to know better and have been through those wars from that era, or that time frame, and watch what happened, they've got to be backstage shaking their head like, did I really put my name on the line for this?
Well, what would Coach, I have a question, a follow-up on that. You're another guy that's been around in this sport. You're another guy that's been a veteran. I mean, what would you be saying in that locker room? Would you be making noise? What would you be saying? Because, I mean, it's obvious that what the product is going through and the viewership speaks for itself. I mean, what would you be saying in that locker room right now?
I'd have probably got myself fired by opening my mouth too much.
Well, you do a good job on Sportzwire opening up your mouth, and that's why we love you having you.
I look at it like this. Like I think about people, like I just said, like especially Jericho. Jericho was that one guy that put everything, his name, his reputation, everything he had on the line to endorse this product, come over here and help them get a little bit of a jump, right? And like, what's Jericho doing now? Like,
I was listening to one of the podcasts.
That's all he's doing.
Hey, I'm glad you said that. For both of you said that, and I'll come back to everybody. I'll get to comment in a second as I thank everybody for tuning in. But at one of our podcasts, which Randy, very well, also the Squared Circle Radio guys, Chris Belcher and Andy York, for the first time, I felt like I was listening this week to the footsteps that Chris Jericho maybe is on TV too much, and maybe he's turning into what he didn't want to be. And is Jericho now a part of the problem? Because they were making the point that Jericho, he should be moved to the side almost, more or less. What do you make of that, Randy? I see you shaking your head a little bit.
Oh, you look at Jericho's put over talent. Like he let
for sure.
Talent
Ricky Starks, he's put over MJF in the past. Yep, Hook.
But
yep.
How much has he win carry talent? Like when I see someone putting over a talent, like
I'll be right back. Hold on.
Sure, no problem. We'll see you, Coach.
Example, I'll give John Cena the example. In 2015, he lost to Kevin Owens in that first match. Even though Cena won that feud, Owens was able to get some momentum for that. Every guy Jericho's been in the ring with, whether win or lose, their momentum just collapsed. Like, look at Hook as the latest example. Where is he going? Ricky Stark, they had to build him as a heel. Sammy Guevara put him with Don Callis, and all of a sudden we got to put him back. MJF, the end of that feud, it feels like MJF was just kind of in no man's land. But
MJF, I think, he fared the best of them, though. I would think that he fared the best of them.
I guess, like, Will Ospreay, thankfully, Will Ospreay was the only one you can make the exception, but Will Ospreay was still in New Japan, so like he was able to disappear and stuff. But like, you look at all these talents Jericho's been in the ring with, he hasn't been able to really give them momentum. It's just, okay, I'll put you over, but I'm still going to be the main event star. I'm still going to be on TV. You're not going to be on TV next week.
That's a good point. I'm going to get to comments in a couple of minutes, but, I saw you nodding your head, Shane Davidson, because you've been in a main event, so you know what goes on. You've been in a company that gets thousands of subscribers and thousands of views. So, I mean, would you be the first to say something? I mean, what could be done if you're in that locker room right now? All three of you have some varying degrees of wrestling experience. Randy trained. Coach, you've obviously, done a lot in your career. Shane, you've done a little bit of the indies, and obviously you were a part of a company that's extremely well established. I mean, but, for you, Shane, I mean, Armageddon, Shane Davidson, what would you be the first one or what? And somebody has to say something, I would think, right?
When it comes to something needing to change, yeah, I'm all for being the first one to stand up. Yeah, I mean, you can look at my history and like.
Oh, well, we're not gonna go there, but yes.
But no, I would be the first one to stand up and be like, hey, look, there's something wrong here. Obviously, we're not doing something right, and let's do something that stands out. And they're not doing anything that's standing out besides this Tony Khan bullshit.
Well, Eric Bischoff made the point that Tony Khan, instead of interjecting himself now in storylines, should go the other way and just get the hell out and basically step aside from the product and just appoint somebody in there to basically start from scratch. Just maybe that would salvage AEW. Is that wrong or right, or what do you guys all think of that before I get to the comments?
I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to piss some people off, but I absolutely 100% agree with that statement.
Okay, tell us why.
For the simple fact, Tony Khan has no experience in the ring. He only did it because he liked to watch wrestling.
Fair.
So,
he's a mark. He's a super fan.
Exactly. He's a mark. And like the simple fact that like he's out here booking matches, not even knowing how to put together a show correctly. That's why everything's plummeting the way it is, because he's marking the fuck out and he's getting to meet all these wrestlers, all the people from WWE. He's getting assigned because they're
got a big checkbook.
His dad has a big checkbook. Let's make that
and a big checkbook.
Fair point. Well, Eric Bischoff made the point. You guys will want to laugh. Coach is going to love this point. Eric Bischoff said on his podcast this week that he said that what Tony Khan really is basically again, this is not my opinion. We're a family station. We're about to say, again, this is not my opinion. He said that Tony Khan basically is a lucky sperm.
Yes.
Wasn't that Shane McMahon called the prodigal son? Like, I know we don't. Chris loves saying his name, Vince McMahon, and you look at Vince McMahon when you're on air on TV. Wasn't he looking at 40s, 50s, doing all this back end work, taking over dad promotion? We didn't see him till like very late. Like, he did a lot of running around, and Tony Khan, after every Dynamite, he had to come out. They thanked the crowd. His life was in danger with CM Punk. Punk talked about the whole issue.
But you know what the difference was with Shane McMahon versus Tony Khan? Here's the difference, right? Shane McMahon did work in the family business. He did refereeing. He, like you said, worked backstage. He did stuff that he kind of got a chance to understand what was going on. Stephanie McMahon sold merchandise. Stephanie McMahon worked in the headquarters there in Stanford.
Yeah, well, you guys are also forgetting one big factor between Shane and Tony. The McMahon family in general and Tony Khan, every member of the McMahon family versus Tony Khan. you're talking about two different fucking universes. Like,
yeah, really.
Every member of the McMahon family has given and given and given into wrestling over the last decades. Tony Khan comes out of nowhere with a deep pocket and goes, I'm going to be a wrestling fan and have my own thing, and I want to fucking run my shit, and it's going to be awesome. And you're right, he comes out all the time. You see, the funny thing is, you see Tony Khan on TV more than you see the commentators on camera. That's what it feels like to me.
And he wouldn't do that at the beginning. Do you remember go back 5 years ago that he specifically said he wasn't going to do any of that? He specifically said he was going to step aside and basically let the professionals run things. And essentially, he's going completely 360, so therefore he's a hypocrite and is everything that he wasn't going to be. I mean, to me...
Well, like I said, he let his Super Mark Hard on get rock solid, and he fucking come out, and he wants to sit there and he wants to put his dinghy into every fucking body's business. And what would he come out? What was he out there with a neck brace on, and he's still turning his head and shit? I'm like, dude, you can't even play that right. Like, stop it. Stop it. I swear to God, I've said this many times on this show, Tom. I'd be surprised if it lasts another year or two. We all saw what happened the last time.
Okay. Hold up on that. I'm going to get to some comments because I have a follow up on that for all three of you guys, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Want to say hello to Mr. Ethan Sorensen. How you guys doing today? We're doing great. Want to say hello to a buddy of mine that I'm sure Mr. Davidson knows, who's going to be here Monday night, Mr. Jack Spade. Mr. Spade would like to say one thing AEW has going against them is that WWE is considered the standard. Everything they do will be compared to WWE. It's a hard act to follow. Do you agree with that, old gentleman?
Yes.
Why? Okay, let's go with the no first. You say no, Randy. Why? Then I'll go with Coach.
AEW came in 2019. The product for WWE was so bad. It was ferocious, where AEW was good. The thing is, in these past 5 years, WWE has now grown and improved their product, where AEW, they're still 5 years ago. Where they're at beginning. There's no growth. It's the same thing. It's just getting worse. They're not going in any direction where they cleaned up their mess.
And you say yes, Coach. Why?
WWE is the standard bearer. They have set the bar. And everything that anyone does, any other company in the world will always be compared to what Vince and his family has done, even from all the way going back to his father and his grandfather, because WWE, I mean, you got to look at it. The evidence is right there. The proof's in the pudding. WWE has been the fucking standard in wrestling, in professional wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it, for decades. We're talking decades. Like their fucking legacy is planted. You ain't fucking moving that foundation. You ain't even rocking it. And everybody and anybody who's anybody can say whatever they want. But everybody that is in wrestling now, every wrestler that comes into the business now, I guarantee you at one point was a huge fan of some sort of WWE or WWF criteria that inspired them to get into it. I mean, what does that tell you? The inspiration starts with WWE. The competition goes against is to compete against WWE, and then the goal is to try to outdo WWE. But when the competition doesn't work out and the company doesn't work out, where do these people wind up going? Fucking WWE half the time. WWE is, for all intents and purposes, exactly what they call their fans, the WWE universe, wrestling's universe. That they are the fucking leaders of it, and no one or nothing has been able to fracture them or hurt them since WCW for 80 some fucking weeks, and then they didn't even fucking succeed. They failed too. Right? And
They
that was
failed. Yes, they failed, but there was at least a track record of success. Well, let me ask you guys.
let me say this one last thing because I got to run into this store real quick.
Sure.
It's also and I want everybody to remember this. This is like we see this in wrestling all the time with talent, with stables, tag teams, owners, different companies that come and go. There's a big difference between making an impact and setting a new tone in wrestling versus being just the flavor of the week. And right now, AEW went from looking like they were going to stake their claim in the business, and now all they do is look like the flavor of the week. And very soon, the flavor is going to be gone, and people are going to be going, AEW who?
Now, Shane Davidson, I was wondering, what flavor are you actually eating?
I am eating some chocolate peanut butter trail mix.
Oh, okay. Certainly. Okay, you enjoy that. I'll get to the draft in a few minutes, Ethan Sorensen. So let me ask you guys this question. And Coach is going to the store, and we'll certainly let Coach go to the store. But let me ask you both this question, and I was kind of thinking about this before we went on the air, and tell me your thoughts. Is Tony Khan basically just repeating the same mistakes that Dixie Carter did?
Totally.
And why?
The people they're bringing in, the money they're paying for some of this talent, the fact is they can't get anything, they can't push their new talent. When you look at TNA at first, and Tom, we talked about this much with TNA, it was kind of like you saw something different with the likes of Samoa Joe, the Motor City Machine, Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles,
Samoa Joe, Petey Williams once upon a time, the women's division. You got the beautiful people, yep.
You saw something different, and where you did get WWE talent coming along, Christian Cage, Kurt Angle, the Team 3D, Booker T, Kevin Nash, but they were able to help this talent as well. Like, these guys didn't go anywhere. They were still a facile part of TNA. When Hogan and Bischoff came in, those are the mistakes Dixie Carter made. Could she really push these guys out? Like, their top guys, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Abyss, they get pushed aside, and guys like Jeff Hardy, Mr. Anderson are winning world titles. The 8th and 8 was a great feud, but other than that, you just saw it was ex-WWE guys, and I think Tony Khan's been doing that since day one. Any ex-WWE guy come, he put them on television. And
you want to shake your head, Shane Davidson, because you again have the unique perspective of actually being a part of a major organization that's been very successful. So you have seen this firsthand, and you've been a top guy, and you've had certainly your own issues in that organization. But I saw you shaking your head. You might want to tell us why.
Oh man, he said a name that that I didn't realize was so overlooked, and he said Mr. Anderson. That was the name that threw me off because I was like, damn, I really liked Mr. Anderson. And then
one of those guys that never won a world title, if I'm not mistaken. One of those guys that just, for whatever reason, never won a world title.
He was the thing is for him, he was world title material in my opinion. I just think they didn't know how to use him. You get people that are ultra good in the ring, they don't know how to use them. Like, for example, Keith Lee. AEW had Keith Lee. That was a phenomenal talent that WWE.
And they got him when he was red hot. WWE seemed like they were pushing him during COVID, and then it kind of fell apart. And then he went to AEW, and is he on a milk carton somewhere? Witness protection? Does he exist?
Exactly.
Malachi Black, another perfect example of it. Sorry.
Oh my God. Yeah. Dude, yeah, Malachi Black, dude, that's crazy.
I actually met Malachi Black without meeting him. I have a funny Malachi Black story. I was actually a friend of mine is a independent wrestler. He trained out of the House of Glory, and Mr. Malachi Black was actually there, and I met him without meeting him. Basically, I was in the same room with him. He was shaking hands with people, and I was basically in the background talking to my friend who was the wrestler, and I should have probably spoke to Malachi Black, hey, do you want to come on Sportswire? But I was like, the good soldier saying, I'll just speak with my friend. But there you go. Different conversation for a different time. But the point, I think AEW's got a lot of problems. And, but speaking of that, which we'll wrap this up and come back to some WWE talk for the second part of the hour. So you guys buy that AEW is worth a couple of billion US dollars, which would be what Canadian, like 1.5 billion. So if it's 2 billion, it's Canadian like 1.5, right? 1.5 billion, something like that. So you guys buy that, and who would really buy AEW if it's worth that much? I mean, that's a question I should ask you about.
If I had the money, I would. And I'd
You buy AEW for $2 billion? You think it's worth $2 billion?
Not $2 billion, no.
$2 million?
$2 million?
You think it's worth $2 billion?
$5.
I guess
You
those
think-
Dave Meltzer's ratings must have something to do with the profits. I guess they're
Drop
looking the
the price
ratings
down to about like 800,000. I'll talk with you, but other than that, no.
I don't know how they're worth. How are they worth $2 billion? I want to know, how could they be worth $2 billion when the viewership is down? They still don't have a TV deal. You know, they were talking about this week on Eric Bischoff's podcast. Now, I know he hates Tony Khan. It's a well documented history there, but one of their most recent shows, they only sold 700 paid tickets. So how could a company that sells 700 tickets? In fact, we have a company on Sportzwire Radio that comes on here, which Chris Craven knows, and actually Shane Davidson definitely knows, called the IMF, and their shows actually sell almost as many tickets as AEW, so maybe they should be worth $2 billion. I mean, I don't want to give Omen Black and Soldier GP any ideas. I mean, but the point is that how could they be worth $2 billion based on the numbers I'm talking about? Live tickets aren't very many. Viewership is down. No TV deal. So who made this and said that they're worth an estimated $2 billion?
Well, I've thought about this. AEW, I think globally is profitable.
You know who should buy it?
Who, Coach? Who?
You want to know who should buy it? Paul Heyman.
Well, you know, it's funny you said that. I was listening to this week. Originally, Paul Heyman wanted to actually technically have an ownership stake in TNA. He offered to do 6 months free of the booking. In exchange, he wanted 50% of the company. Dixie, what do you think Dixie Carter's answer was?
Nope.
Like a Wang.
Well, I mean, he might have wanted to have something with her, but different conversation for today. But the point is, you know, Paul Heyman, yeah, just like Paul Heyman with TNA. There was talk of Paul Heyman coming into TNA, and that was the deal. He didn't want any money up front. He wanted to book the company for 6 months, book it free. Basically, if he got the ratings up to a certain number, he wanted 50% of the company. She said no.
That makes sense.
I think that WWE, in partnerships with Heyman, should buy AEW and then allow AEW to turn that into a new ECW brand, because Heyman's probably the only other promoter on the earth right now that could probably do something with it, with its extreme tactics.
Fair. Okay.
But as long as the cons have money, AEW is not going anywhere. Like I think until his Shaq Khan pretty much says, I'm not putting another dime in this company, the company is still going to run, regardless whether they have a TV deal or not. That, I think, is going to come down to Tony Khan Dad saying, we're not putting any more money into the company.
See, I think the TV deal is more fascinating than anything else, because they're having all these problems right now when they don't have a TV deal agreed upon. And I think that's, to me, the biggest story. And, you know, obviously Meltzer's not going to, cover it because he's in the pocket of Tony Khan, figuratively and literally, I'm sure. But they only have extra, it's already now May, right? So the end of the year is coming up. They asked him that question last week, and he was in a presser, and he said there would be details coming out, but usually by now, you would have something agreed upon because the next season is coming up. I just don't understand that rationale, more or less.
I mean, you got to worry about TBS and TNT or Time Warner, if they're still the owners of those networks. I think they are. They can pull the plug. They can be like, just like they did with WCW, like, look, this ain't popping the way we want it. We can do something better with the airtime. And just like WCW, they cut the airtime off of AEW. They're done. It's only a matter of time before they close doors if they refuse to sell.
And I think that's, to me, a point that I think is extremely important, because they don't generate any money from live gates other than, these shows in Wembley, which is great. Wembley, the big shows, obviously Sting's last match on that card. But other than that, they're not drawing any real revenue. So you'd have to have a TV deal. That means you're so important in terms of gaining whatever revenue you earn from your TV media deal, and they don't have one. So, I mean, I just don't understand, what the logic is on there. But if you want to follow us, you can certainly follow us here on our links below. We are on Sportzwire Radio, our internet radio station. So we'll transition here for a little bit in WWE land, and that is from Mr. Ethan Sorensen. I want to ask you, Joe, I know Coach is probably a little behind, but I don't think there was really any major surprises on this, but what did you guys think of the WWE draft so far for Raw and SmackDown? What did you guys think of that so far, for the guys that have a thought or two on that?
I thought it was what it was. Like, I think
pretty much. That's what I thought.
What we're seeing is they're shaping up, trying to get the rosters balanced out, try to create stories going far. I definitely think the bloodline is going to be expanding because you saw Nia Jax going to SmackDown.
That was my point. Yep, good point.
Braun Breaker going to Raw, I think is going to give him much more opportunity and airtime to get out there. So that's a good move there. I'm interested what Carmelo Hayes can do.
And predictably, Roman took himself out of the draft, which basically took him off the table. That was, yep. I don't think that was any bit of a major surprise. I mean, LA Knight's still on SmackDown. Okay, we got that. Bianca Belair still on SmackDown. I mean, Liv Morgan's still on Raw. I mean, obviously the champions are protected. I don't know. I mean, Nia Jax going to SmackDown might have been the biggest move. Braun Breaker going to Raw. That was okay, kind of tat for tat. We saw, Carmelo Hayes wrestle Randy Orton. Obviously, a little bit of a future of the future match there. I mean, anything else come to mind on the draft before I ask about something that I think most people are talking about, which is the new women's champion on Raw, who was the old women's champion. I mean, so many people have opinions on that, but anything else you guys want to put a bow upon with the draft? And obviously, we'll see more of the draft on Monday's show. I didn't think really it was anything groundbreaking, to be honest.
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
Personally, I think they need to do the draft online. Have normal wrestling shows and do the draft online. Like,
didn't they used to do some of it?
Like the show going, this person went here, that person went there.
I feel like they used to do that with the draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Part of the draft. They did some of it on TV, but then after they did the rest online.
Yeah, okay, that makes much sense. Okay, so thank you, Ethan, for that. What's that?
Do the whole thing online. Let us watch wrestling matches.
I hear you, but it is still, it's kind of a way for them to start their new season. If you think about it, the draft is kind of starts the new season of, I'm with you, get to the wrestling, but that's kind of what their unofficial start of the season is. I mean, that's, obviously.
It's just filler now. It's all filler.
It's
certainly no killer, no filler. I was going to say all killer, no filler, but it really wasn't much killers.
It's buying time after Mania, because then after Mania, they need to buy time to figure out what they're doing. It's just more of a save some time.
Because I don't think they had anything made out after this Mania. This was like
No. I think that's some very fair point. Okay, so then I talk to you guys about obviously the news that I guess some people see as controversial. Other people said it was the right move, and I alluded to it. It's the new Raw Women's Champion, who was the old Raw Women's Champion, who we thought was taking a break, and we thought that we weren't going to see her on TV for the foreseeable future. And obviously something happened because Rhea Ripley is on the shelf for a long period of time, and it happened via a battle royal, nevertheless, which is very rare for a championship, a world heavyweight championship of any sort, to be awarded through a over-the-top rumble, but that's what happened here. And what did you guys think on Becky Lynch being the new Raw Women's Champion, as everybody had thought that maybe Liv Morgan would get her moment, but yet, no, that's not the case, and the man is back on top. And I was curious on if you guys had the pencil, would you guys have done it the same way?
I would have.
You would? Tell me why.
I would, because with the roster you have, if the plan is to put over Liv Morgan, there's still something missing there's just still something missing. We're going to make Liv, I think, more of a heel, get some heat on her, take some time. I think her giving the title to Becky to work it up to get her that moment definitely will happen. I feel if you just gave the title to Liv, where do you go there? She doesn't really have any momentum. She's kind of in this no man's land. You give it to Becky, you can give the momentum, get this story going with Liv, and then when the time comes, then give it to her. And then at least then Becky can help get her over as well.
Yes, I see what you're saying with that, but you also have to think like Becky's like I don't even know how many times she's been champion. It's something that's repetitive.
A lot.
You know what I'm saying? It's something that is like continuously like you get tired of seeing the same thing. It's literally you're expecting a different response, but you're getting the same outcome. And it's like I get it. It's Becky Lynch. You know, she's the man. I get it. But like there's like a lot of other talent that like can be utilized in the women's division. They're just not wanting to utilize them. Like, for example, they could have put the title back on Bianca Belair, and I guarantee that would have made the women's division go crazy again. But that's just my personal opinion.
So you would not have went with Becky then?
No.
And who would you have went with then?
Like I said, I would have personally rather see Bianca Belair go for the belt again, or you know, you got Cora Jade or whatever her name is.
Well, Cora Jade's out for months. She's got basically a torn ACL. But Liv Morgan, you would not have went with either on the Raw end of it. Would you have went with? Okay, let me give you a better alternative. Would you have went, even though she got drafted to SmackDown? You could have made the case maybe you want Nia Jax to have the title. Would you went with Nia Jax? No.
She's not ready for a championship yet.
Nope.
In my opinion. That's my opinion, though.
Oh, no. And that's what we want to hear, obviously. That's what you guys are here for. I know nothing about it.
That they're ready to do
I'm
that.
asking you guys.
You know, there's one person they could have thrown the title on, but I think because of her condition, she couldn't get it. That would have been Raquel Rodriguez. That would maybe be the one person I would have thrown the title on, but because of her condition, her flare-up, they don't know what's going on.
Well, I had a name for you that's been brought up. I mean, TBK, when he's been here with us, has mentioned it. And what about Alexa Bliss? Would have that been the moment to reintroduce her with a title?
I think they're saving her for the Uncle Howdy thing, to be honest. Whatever going to happen.
No. I mean, just threw that out there. I mean, people were screaming about Liv Morgan, but I understand your point because you want maybe Liv to chase the title and not get it right away.
Earn the title. That's the. I see what Randy was saying with that. Like,
Becky's really the only option to go with. Let Becky have the title for a couple of months, and if you want Liv, great. Or if you want somebody else,
but that's the thing. Tom. Becky is very a hit or a miss. Like, she's very injury prone. So like, you gotta be flexible with that situation, especially if you have a history of consistent injuries. She's not consistent in the ring. Like, you see what I'm saying with that?
Becky's got the trust of the whole company. Like, they know that if something ever went wrong, we have these school of talent over here that we can always rely on. If we got to put a belt on them, if we got to put them over, if we got to slide them into a spot where someone got hurt. And Becky's just one of those talents that they're always going to go to.
Yep.
It's just,
and like I said, it's a hit or a miss with me because like you got other talent like I said, Bianca Belair.
Is that because, in your opinion, that Becky's already been established for a long period of time, and you feel like that it's kind of already been there, done that? Is that kind of your logic?
Yeah, it's repetitive, and in my personal opinion, I like to see something different. But that's my personal opinion. That's like, I don't know.
No, Shane, you definitely got a point there. And the thing is with the Battle Royal, I was very interested because I thought Bianca could have been an option there. But I think because they didn't put her in the Battle Royal, they didn't want her on Raw. They want to keep her on SmackDown. You look at all the talent in that Battle Royal. Like, you could have put down the kids. You could have gave the title to someone like Naomi. You could have gave it to someone like Alba Fire, otherwise known as, Kaylee Ray back in her time with NXT. You could have gave it to someone like Asuka. That's all we noticed.
Yeah, I understand the point. Ethan Sorensen, let me get him in. I want to thank everybody. We have 105 people watching this right now, so I want to say thank you. And if you're out there right now, hit that sub button for us at Sportswire Radio 6579. Check us out on sportswireradio.org. And also check us out on these guys on their platforms. Obviously, Coach, you can find him on Facebook, Chris Warburton. This man, it's your boy Shane, a bunch of underscores in between that on Instagram. Randy Dillon, he makes it the easiest. He's first name, last name, Instagram, and Twitter. Give him a follow. He's a fun follow on Twitter, and he's always putting a lot of good stuff out there, hockey and wrestling. But Ethan Sorensen wants to make a point, and he says, in my opinion, Tom, I would have thought that Liv Morgan would have became the champion, especially since she was the one who attacked Rhea and made her vacate the title. And she said a few things about that, and that's his perspective, and is he wrong? Is he right? I mean, tell me what you think.
I think it just go back to what the coach said. They played it safe. They had trust in Becky. Where Liv, that trust in her first run, it just didn't work out. So they don't want to make the same mistake again.
I think it's a valid point. I think that there's, obviously a point that. You can't knock them on that. She's the safe bet. And if she's going to be, the point, maybe she's the transitional champion. No?
Yeah.
You want to say something, Coach? Did you want to say something? Or?
Transitional champion. She's going to hold it until they're ready to move it again. And that's it. She's going to get the belt from point A to point B, and that's it.
Can I spit a
I
hot
highly doubt back to
Yeah. This is Sportswire.
I highly doubt that Becky is going to hold that belt until Rhea comes back.
Give me a hot take. Shane Davidson, Armageddon Shane Davidson. Give me a hot take.
Here's my hot take, guys. Gigi Dolan. I think she is ready to become the women's champion.
Gigi Dolan is gonna. That's a real boy. You got a real hot take. I mean, you want to bet on this?
I don't want to bet on it, but like, I
think they could have. If you really want to throw in Lyra Valkyrie, she just lost the NXT title. You could have put her the Raw Women's Champion. Her, like he would have been a better bet. Gigi Dolan, I think she needs a big run in NXT before getting the Raw Championship.
You want to say something, Coach? Go ahead.
This opportunity, being that it's a paper, it's kind of like a transition shape.
And speaking of people here that love to give hot takes, and
this would have been, and people may not agree with me. They may. I don't know. I don't give a shit. This
is where you care about the people's opinion anyway.
This would have been a perfect opportunity having a transition champion from Rhea until Liv, because Liv is probably the next runner-up. She more than likely is.
Yeah. Yep. Fair. Very fair.
Give it to Natty. Someone who well over fucking has earned it.
Yeah, I mean,
Natty's getting to the point where she's. You got to think she's probably getting close to the end of her career. She's closer to the end than she is at the beginning.
So is she the women's version of AJ Styles, in your opinion?
I would give Natty the rub. I'd give her the bump. Even if you're just doing a transition champion thing, give it to Natty, man. Give her something. Like, she's been in the business since what? Like 06?
Oh
yeah.
07.
Yeah.
So, like, Jesus. She's held the belt 2 times in all this time, in what, 18 years? Like, give her something.
Yeah.
Give her a bump. She was in that battle royal.
There was no momentum for her. Speaking of people that have been in main events, speaking of people that know all about momentum, speaking of people that certainly like to have hot takes, and speaking of people that were on TV where many people saw his return to the ring, his name is Alan Michaels once again. He is the trendsetter. He is the host of the Staying Trendy show, and he is a part of the TSF Takes. And how you doing? How you feeling, by the way, after what happened to you yesterday, where you controversially lost, by the way, your foot was on the ropes, and It looks like the referee, Ref Carter, had a lot of ref problems throughout episode 160, and you lost a match that seemed like you shouldn't have lost, but you lost. And, how you feeling? I'm surprised you're here with us, actually. Shows that you're not a sore loser after all. It shows that you're here, and you're certainly a great player and a team player. And I have to ask you, how are you feeling right now, Alan Michaels?
Well, honestly, I feel like $1,000,000. Those
you lost though yesterday.
Hey, I lost. I did. I lost indeed. But for someone who gets,
did your opponent grab you by the handlebars? Is that what that was?
Nah.
His opponent, actually, because he wears a turtleneck. You know his opponent.
Hey, but I kicked out of the royalty after getting low blows. I mean, he couldn't put me out. He had to resort to the ref being blind to get the win over me.
And speaking of other people here from the TSF Takes, we're joined by Mr. Big T, who right here is also a wrestling fan. It was news to me that you were a wrestling fan, which is why we brought you in here the last few minutes. And, how are you doing, Mr. Big T? And I'm sure you had a vested interest yesterday because Mr. Michaels returned to the ring, and you were probably rooting for Mr. Michaels' opponent because that helps you get the edge, the inside track on the eating contest coming up on May 24th. So how you feeling, Big T?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Always good to see Mikey return back to action, man. Always good. Love it.
But you were secretly, I'm sure, pulling for his opponent?
I was hoping so, but you know how much. I gotta love him, gotta hate him. That's all.
Boy, we got a full house here already. So I obviously we were talking Big T about a couple different things. WWE, talking the draft, talking about AEW. I heard obviously that you're a wrestling fan, which I should have asked you before in the last 2 months, but now I know. And we're waiting for the other guys who aren't wrestling fans to come in here. Chris Bazea and Rob Maraska, Contest Man, and Chris Bazea is obviously. We want to say obviously we're missing DK this week. He's at the Predator. Well, he was at the Predators game, and also Scooby Stoney is no longer going to be with us. We're going to miss Scooby here on the platform. Scooby, we're really going to miss him. But Big T, what are some of your Big T takes on some of the things that have going on this week in the world of wrestling?
Man, honestly, I really just consider myself like a hype train wrestler. Or not like a fan of wrestling. I don't really keep track like these other guys doing here, but I definitely know the names.
Mr. Michael spoke too soon. Then he told me you were a big wrestling fan.
Exactly. I don't think I'm that big, man. And these guys definitely know a lot more about that than I do. That's for sure.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to have plenty of takes on the draft in about 10 minutes, so we're going to certainly get to the NFL draft for sure. But, okay, so obviously we got that stuff out of the way. I'm going to let the wrestling guys, and I think, Randy, if you're up for it, I'll probably go back to the NHL in about 45 or 50 minutes. There's a lot to talk about in the NHL.
I'd love to talk about NHL.
A lot to talk about the NHL because I got a lot of things to get off my chest when it comes to the New York Islanders, and you probably say the same about the Washington Capitals. We're in the same spot, sadly, but our buddy DK, I'm sure, will talk a lot about that next Friday when he returns. But for the wrestling guys that are going to leave, I want to go, or even just in wrestling in general, is there one or two things for anybody here wrestling-wise that we didn't bring up that you want to talk about now as we speak?
Why the fuck is AJ Styles in the main event picture right now at Cody Rhodes?
Exactly why you wanted Natalya to win the women's title?
Nope. I think that giving LA Knight the spotlight is better than giving AJ the spotlight right now.
But could you say though that AJ Styles, it keeps LA Knight away from Cody Rhodes, so he doesn't have to take an L?
I think they need to push LA Knight. That's the point. They need to keep him. They need to keep LA up here instead of slowly lowering him back down. They need to keep his momentum going.
But isn't that saying though that they're afraid to give him an L?
No, even if they gave him an L, he's gonna put on a good show. LA's gonna put on a good showing.
Absolutely,
AJ's gonna put on a good showing too. But LA, like I said, that's why I worded it that way. LA needed the spotlight more than AJ.
Okay, but LA Knight.
Same thing y'all talking about. Becky didn't need the bump on Monday.
But okay, so let me phrase it in a different way, and I see guys want to jump in on this, and I'm going to do that in a second. But let me set the tables for the guys so the guys can hit it out of the park here. What you're telling us is that basically AJ Styles has no believability in this match, and that really at the end of the day he's got no shot here. Let's see somebody else here. Let's try to hit one out of the park with a guy like LA Knight, and who you're trying to make as a made man. Correct?
Ultimately, everybody knows Cody's going to keep the belt for his first defense. You're not going to go through all of that, finally beat the one guy that no one could fucking beat, just to have him lose it like a few weeks later. It ain't happening. The point was, the way I worded it, it's better to keep LA Knight in the spotlight and keep his momentum going and keep him in that picture, that main event picture, than put AJ in there right now. It's better to shine light on LA than AJ. AJ's had all his turns. He's done. Dude, AJ could do anything in that company. LA's the one who needs the push. Yep. AJ's had his pushes.
Yep.
Like, give that guy that hasn't had it the opportunity to stay up there for a minute.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna also
the motherfucker's paid his dues. Like, he deserves it.
I'm gonna add on to that with the simple fact that LA Knight already took an L against Roman Reigns for the Universal title.
Correct.
This Mania, they put the spotlight back on him by letting him defeat AJ Styles.
And then AJ Styles got the win back then.
Now here's the thing, Tom. They're in a predicament. Let Cody hold the belt for a while or immediately put the title on LA Knight. They're going to let Cody hold the title for as long as he possibly can.
So it makes no sense then for LA Knight to be in that match then, basically what you're telling me, right?
Absolutely.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I see Randy shaking his head. No, hold on. I see Randy shaking his head when I'm talking about LA getting a bump. Tom, you're like, what the? You're like, what do you mean?
No, I'm trying to understand what you guys are trying to say. To me, help me understand.
Before Mania, you, Randy, and BK were all sitting there talking about how LA Knight needed to have something. He needed to stay in some sort of a spotlight.
Correct.
So here you go after Mania going into Backlash, and I say it, and it's like, what the fuck, Craven?
Now no. Well, I tell you the difference. Here's the difference. The difference was you gave him a title, right, to elevate him, right? But now you're putting him in a feud already off the bat. Where what was the common theme that I heard two people say in this discussion so far? Cody's getting his first defense. He's not losing the title in that first defense, right? That correct?
It don't matter who you put him, guys. He's not losing the first time around.
So
wouldn't see that happen.
Okay, so that you make my point. Wouldn't it not make? It doesn't make sense then for LA Knight to go and be the first guy. Let it go for a couple months and maybe SummerSlam.
You want a full script? I'll give you a full script. Hold on. No, I'll give you a full script. You let AJ, and you can do it either way, really. But you let LA Knight go into Backlash against Cody. AJ interferes, screws the fucking match up, or comes out when the match is over. Those two are continuing, but now Cody's thrown in the mix, and now you got 3 top main eventers, enough to carry the storyline and a feud even bigger and longer for a couple more months with these 3 individuals. And then, if you decide to throw anybody else in there, it just keeps getting bigger, at least until they're ready to bring fucking Roman back, or The Rock says, I want to put on boots again. Because, let's face it, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, hell, maybe even Mania next year, you're looking at involvement by Rock and Roman in some capacity in the main event picture.
Absolutely. No question.
So keep it interesting and keep it like that's. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to what Triple H has been doing, but he's been starting to bring back a lot of that juggling, a lot of that chaos, that out of nowhere attacks, all this chaos. He's starting to get like ramped up. Like
we saw it today. We saw it last week. I mean, we've seen it all. Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing, I guess, something different. Ethan Sorensen would like to say, before we move on, I know Rob Maraska's waiting. He's got a contest to announce, but he's going to have to wait a few minutes. Tom, honestly, I thought that Randy Orton was going to Raw and have a feud with Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship. Did you not see that Chad Gable is going to have a feud with him, since Randy is a former Intercontinental Champion? Womp, womp.
So, Chris, I want to add one thing to what you're saying. I agree with your point. You got to give LA Knight something. He had this feud with Cody, or in this triple threat match with Cody. Cody, I don't think losing the belt not until 2025, whether it's early, mid, before Mania. Putting LA Knight here, what do you do with him after this feud? He's in a no man's land. I honestly think they're saving LA Knight win against Logan Paul because one, all the stars everyone will be watching that. Then he'll finally get his big cue. That's what my honest opinion is going to be. Where he's going to be the one to take the title from Logan Paul. That's why he's not there because Logan Paul's not there right now. But I think that is what's going to lead up to it.
Alan Michaels or Shane Davis, did you want to say anything before we move on? Anything else you guys want to say on this? No?
Yeah, I agree with Randy Dillon. Honestly, you can't really throw LA Knight into a match with Cody right after Mania because you want to keep LA Knight in that top main event picture, but you also don't want to just crush all of his momentum by taking that first L against Cody. You want to build him up a little bit longer down the line.
How can you say that? And you say that, but explain Jey Uso going against a world heavyweight title. You know damn well he's probably not going to take it from Damian.
No, he's not.
He's got just as much hype and stake in the game as LA right now, moving into that main event picture, sliding upwards.
That's because I think Jey Uso's story goes beyond the title right now with Tama Tonga coming in and the signing of Jacob Fatu. That his story is just beginning in that aspect. So he'll need a title.
You're wrong. Jey Uso doesn't have any attachment to the bloodline. They are not playing Jey into the bloodline any further other than his attachment with his brother, which they have showed at Mania is an entirely different entity. The brothers against each other is an entire different formula than what the rest of the bloodline is doing and what it's doing now with Solo running this fucking spot. You still got LA, who's fast rising star. What was he? They keep saying it every week for the last year. He's the fastest rising star.
He was the number one merchandise seller at one point.
Right. LA Knight, it's not about wins and losses. It's about keeping him in that light.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What do you think of LA Knight after the feud with Cody? Because like I said, Cody's not dropping this belt anytime soon. What do you do with him after?
Send him to your house and make him wrestle you.
It's going to be a short match. Ref, I haven't done that in a while.
Well, I think Alan Michaels has been back in the ring. So, Alan Michaels, you're ready. I saw you're able to run the ropes again. I saw that you're out there and able to do some different things in the ring. I have to ask, because I see guys are waiting in, but I have to ask you one funny note, Alan Michaels. Are we able to go to the Red Bubble store once again and buy the Stay in Trendy shirts?
Oh yeah, get your TPW merch at Red Bubble. Get the.
I'm gonna be making sure I get the Alan Michaels Stay in Trendy shirt. I make sure you got my word. I'm gonna do it this weekend. I add that to the list. You know what my running joke is, real quick. Everyone's gonna probably laugh at this. That every time I'm on Sportswire, I feel like I have to put a wrestling shirt on, almost like my work uniform. It's almost like now it's like my work uniform. Literally, like I have to go on.
I'm gonna be Randy today.
Now, which belt versions do both of you have? Let's the tail of the tape.
That is
They're the same, I think.
Same thing. Fair enough. Okay, so obviously I see poor Rob Maraska's waiting there, who knows zero about wrestling, and he's waiting to give me a contest winner. Well, that's true. Well, you were a former world champion. Anything you want to say, Coach, before we let you go? And then I'm going to go to the same with Randy. Are you hanging out with us, Shane Davidson? What are you doing? You're hanging out. Okay. You're staying, Shane Davidson. Good enough. But for you, Coach, and Randy, I'll bring you back on in a little while again to talk about the NHL. But what would you two like to say for now as your parting shots?
Hockey sucks.
Well, I might tell you that it sucks after tomorrow at 4:30. So, as an Islanders fan, if my team loses tomorrow, I might be back and saying that. So,
how it goes?
I don't have anything to say.
Fair enough. Well, I'll see you anyway. I'm sure this weekend. And Randy, anything you want to say? Wrestling parting shot.
I'll add one thing. AEW's last TNA's last paper had 500 buys. There's some problem there. There's 80. I think 89% in buy rate. They were like doing 20,000 and they only had 500.
Wait. Did you say, correct me if I'm wrong, TNA only had 500 buys?
Yeah, that was reported.
So, for what you're telling me then, that some companies that come onto Sportswire actually have more actual buys and more engagements, it sounds like. I'm going to say this here, and I know Rob Rosk is going to know nothing about this, and probably Big T. I'm going to say this here. So you're telling me, right, that TNA only had 500 buys, right? Okay, yeah, correct, right? 500 buys. So I'm gonna get some heat for this for sure. So for everybody that says, "Oh, backyard wrestling this, oh, backyard wrestling that," but I'll damn well guarantee you that almost all the backyard wrestling companies that come on this platform would get more buys than TNA, have more views, more actual earned engagements, and they don't have millions of dollars of some Anthem Entertainment company that's pumping them in on a network with hundreds of thousands of views, basically put in there where they can't lose and can't fail. So it tells you that TNA really is about to fail, and it really tells you that for all the heat that backyard wrestling companies get, at the end of the day, that backyard wrestling gets more engagements than TNA.
I don't know. I think with all the deals Triple H is making with all these people, I think maybe he should just buy all the wrestling companies and own it all under one
TNA
umbrella.
went downhill when Scott D'Amore left. They said that killed that company. There's one thing that's going to kill
500 buys is embarrassing. IMF would get more buys than that. TBW would get more buys than that. VTW would get more buys than that. Maybe even WCU and Craven Rage. I mean, maybe Triple W would get more buys than that. After all, that loose cannon Freddie Daniels match went viral on YouTube, and Soldier and Omen, they know it, the world knows it, they would get more buys. Listen, the rematch of Loose Cannon and Freddie Daniels will get more buys than TNA.
We're also not worth $2 billion.
That's true, too. Maybe a Monopoly money they're worth that. All right, Coach, I'm going to let you run. Randy, I'll see you back in a little while. Thank you, gentlemen, for your contributions, and I will certainly talk to you guys very soon, in Randy's case, in about 40 minutes. That was Randy Dillon and Coach Chris Craven, and we're going to switch teams and go back to Chris Pizzea. So it's 6 of us here. Alan Michaels, boy, you almost inflated there a little bit there with those big arms there. What are you going to the gym? Are you getting ready for the eating contest on May 24th? But speaking of contests, Rob Moroska, I know you got a contest. I'm going to work away. I have a lot of talk about the NFL draft. I'm going to get to baseball. I promise we'll do a little bit of baseball, but probably a little less light on baseball today, just because there's a lot of sports news going on. But you got this contest, and you got to tell me about it.
It's the continuation of the Ellie De La Cruz card.
Is there a winner this week?
I put it. I'm gonna pick a winner next week because I put it up again this morning, and I got a lot of people messaging. You
gotta tell them, and what you gotta do is you gotta tell them that they can click on it and retweet it, but they gotta be here to actually listen to them win. You gotta tell these contests are great, but you gotta tell them, you gotta physically drag them, almost grab them by the neck, and say you gotta be here though on Sportswire, so you can listen to the show and find out if you won or lost, because then really you're just saying, pick me, and then just take your card and really just basically,
that's why I'm not going to put it on Twitter beforehand.
Good deal.
I just got a lot of messages today of people who want to enter, so I wasn't able to pick anyone yet.
All right, fair enough. Good deal. And we're obviously kidding around and want to say hello to Joe Dell. Joe is here. How you doing, Joe? I'm going to save the Ranger talk in a little while. Let's go Mets. We'll definitely come back to that, but I want to get to the NFL draft for things because I got Big T here. I got Alan Michaels, who's certainly been a very, very, very interesting topic in the world, but not in football. But he's got some hot takes to it. So let's go with here first. I want to go to Chris Pizzea. Chris is the host of the Liftoff Jets, and they have a show that we're going to play this weekend on the platform because I'm live actually twice on Sunday, 2 different times. So I'm going to use you almost in wrestling terms. I'm going to use you as kind of my hold to get my breath back and be able to go back for my second time out there in the ring. But I'm going to take a break from wrestling and ask you some thoughts on the NFL draft and give me your winners and losers so far. And what do you think about the Jets so far in this year's draft?
Oh, so far the Jets, I mean, the couple of picks they've made, I love Fashanu, the tackle they took in the first round. That's great. I mean, we need the depth on the offensive line. I know a lot of people wanted Bowers. I wanted Bowers too. but I think we need to tackle more. There's so many question marks on that offensive line. As good as it is, our starting tackles, huge question marks, and also AVT as well with the injury history as well. So I was all for taking the tackle as well. So that was a great pick. And then tonight, they traded up for Corley, who's they're comparing him to Deebo Samuel if you want a visual there. But he's a little smaller, but height wise, but still really good. They call him the Yak King,
Yep,
So,
yards after the catch. Yep.
yeah. So I'm loving that pick. So I actually, so far what the Jets have done, I can't complain. So we'll see what they have for tomorrow.
Tomorrow's always a big day in the draft. I was listening to some different people talk about that. It's actually, in some ways, you're actually focusing more tomorrow than you've been these first 2 days. I want to go to you, Big T, first, because obviously you're a Chicago Bears fan. I see that Walter Payton jersey in the background, and obviously your team is always in the news, especially with this year's draft. And I was curious, for those that are listening and watching on your team so far, how do you think that your team has done so far in this year's draft?
Man, they did spectacular, man. Obviously, everybody knew Caleb was going to go at one. It was pretty ecstatic, even just hearing it actually happen. Kind of feels like it's going to be a new era for Chicago. But Rome Odunes, I think it's Odunes or Odunes, either way. I was really expecting Chicago to not grab him there. I was really expecting a trade down to help us get some depth picks, but it seems like Chicago knew exactly what they wanted. Atlanta definitely surprised us, not taking Rome. That would have been a great fit over there. And as soon as they took Michael Penix, man, I mean, Rome was free game. We can't pass up on a receiver like that. Thought it was great.
So you feel like that the Bears have done what they've needed to do to keep themselves as a building team? We'll see where they go in the offseason still, and certainly into next season, but you feel so far that the building blocks are there for this continued rebuilding effort?
I'd more say so. Yeah, don't get me wrong, but I'd say it's more so being able to compete with inside the division. Everybody knows that NFC North is on the rise, at least over this year and last year. If you don't keep those stepping stones and you don't keep up tip-top shape, man, you'll get left behind real fast in a division like that, especially with how it's going.
Good point. I'm going to get you a few other draft thoughts overall from the guys, and I will get to baseball. I know we'll definitely get to baseball. I'm going to try to get to everything as much as I can, but I want to go to the man that is famous for his hot takes. He certainly said a lot of hot takes. He called me a Philadelphia Eagles fan on Facebook when I'm not a Philadelphia Eagles fan. That would be Chris Pizzet. Obviously, I'm tongue-in-cheek playing with, obviously, my very close friend and dear friend, Mr. Michaels. And obviously, I had a chat, Mr. Michaels, with your opponent yesterday off the air. Today, I spoke with your opponent. I'm not going to be able what your opponent said to me here. Maybe off the air, I'll talk to you about your opponent. But I want to know, for those that are listening and watching, Mr. Alan Michaels, the trendsetter. You're changing lanes here, talking about the NFL draft. You're going to try to stay trendy with us. And yes, I'm going to buy your shirt this weekend, and I'm going to certainly make sure, hopefully I get it by next Friday's show so I can wear my staying trendy shirt. So every week on Sportswire, I'm going to have another shirt for the work uniform and your merchandise to wear. But until then, tell me what your thoughts are on this NFL draft, but most importantly, what is your hot take this week?
So, I've been questioning the Falcons this whole
You have said a lot about Kirk Cousins. You called him out. You called out the Houston Texans, the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to hear you out, Alan Michaels.
It just occurred to me, after last night that the Kirk Cousins and Atlanta Falcons signing was actually a match made in heaven, because the Falcons and Kirk Cousins both have something in common. They both make really horrible decisions in high pressure situations. The Michael Penix pick would have been amazing if he was about 2 to 3 years younger, but this guy's already 24, almost 25 years old. By the time Big Kirko's contract is up, he's going to be 28, 29. I mean, yeah, it's good to have a rookie quarterback sit behind a veteran, but when the rookies, damn near 3 or 4 years older than half the rookies in the class, you don't have that time to let them sit. Maybe sit for a year or two, but you just signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $100 million contract.
You did, yeah.
Horrible decision. Other than that, though, Joe Alt to the Chargers really surprised me. I really thought that was a pick up a weapon for Herbert. I honestly feel like the Joe Alt pick really not messed up, but really altered the Titans pick. Because I thought for sure the Titans were picking Joe Alt at 7. I almost had it written down. Like, he's going here. But the J.C. Latham pick, I don't think was you really can't go wrong with any of the tackles in the first round. I mean, it was a studded offensive lineman draft, studded receiver draft. But, I think the biggest surprise here is, for one, the Raiders picking up Brock Bowers. You picked up Michael Mayer last year. You already have some depth there at tight end. It really wasn't a need for them. Also, Bo Nix going in the first round. I honestly did not see him going first round.
That was a good point. A lot of people were saying that today on the radio. That was a good point you made.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, the Packers picked up an offensive tackle, which, in my opinion, it's a position of need.
We got the quarterback. You know that.
Yeah. I mean, we just let go of David Bakhtiari, so it's good to have a nice young guy in there to protect Jordan Love for some years.
So you want a hot take, Alan Michaels? Or I'll let the football guys, have a thought on this. You want a hot take? You want to know who was a winner? You ready? Yeah. Daniel Jones. You know why? He's got a job still next season. He's the winner because everybody was talking about here in New York. Oh, the Giants, they're going to get him for a quarterback. They're doing it. They're going to get a quarterback. And then when the dust settles, Daniel Jones is going to be the New York Football Giants starting quarterback. So therefore, Daniel Jones is a winner, and he wasn't even drafted because he gets to go back and resume his job as the starting quarterback for the New York Football Giants in 2024. What do you think, Alan Michaels, as that hot take before I let these guys talk about that?
Well, yeah, you don't pay a quarterback all that money just to draft somebody to start over him. If you're going to take
Daniel Jones' track record, other than one season, is obviously subpar at best.
Daniel Jones is below average mid is what I call it. Like, he's not, below average, but he's no more than mid. And I think that's for a whole career. I think he's just going to be that.
He's below average then, though. He's below average.
He'll get the job done. If he has a star-studded team around him, he might make a playoff run. But
I think he benefited from a great defense. He benefited from, I think, that he finally had Barkley healthy. Yeah, he benefited from those things. Do you like the Giants? And I'll let Chris talk about this in a second, because he obviously covered the draft. Did you like them drafting Malik Neighbors?
I mean, honestly, at the position they were in, at 6, the only other person, Roma Dunzi, I honestly think at that pick right there, it's solid. If you're not going to go for a quarterback, Malik Neighbors is solid. I mean,
okay.
He's not, no one can fix the Giants, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the Giants
Marvin Harrison Jr. couldn't fix the Giants.
Well, the Giants is for the most part, even though Eli Manning was still a fairly competent to good quarterback with 2 Super Bowls, they've never really been a franchise offensively that you go to and say, I'm going to go there and put up big numbers. I mean, they're not to the degree of Big T Chicago Bears where, we talked about this last week on the show, Big T, and, the Chicago Bears offensively, statistically best quarterbacks, Jay Cutler? I mean, what do you have, 2 years, right? 2 big years?
Fun fact, the Chicago Bears' leading receiver for career yards is only 5,000. 5,000. Yeah.
Really?
Yes, that is.
Who is that? And remind me who that leader is. Is
it Bonnie Morris or something? So
it wasn't old record. Brandon Marshall wasn't there very long, right?
Brandon,
maybe 3 years, 2 years.
So he would have had probably what? He's probably in the. I got to imagine he's in the top 10 though, right? Just off those 2 years.
In the next 2 seasons, DJ Moore is probably going to be the leading receiver for the.
That's sad though. 5,000 yards is their all-time leading receiver. 5,000.
It's it's definitely been a struggle at passing the ball in Chicago for as long as.
Oh my goodness! Well,
they can run the ball though.
We know that, but I stand by my point then that what I mean. Jay Cutler did have a few good years with the Bears, but Chris, Giants. Daniel Jones, he a winner? And what do you think of the Giants, obviously, with their move? I mean, what people were talking about here in New York, they're going to draft a quarterback. They didn't, but they drafted a wide receiver at LSU. What'd you make of that?
Well, I looked at it both ways. I love Neighbors, so that's a great pick. But I looked at it from the quarterback standpoint. Are they totally sold on Daniel Jones? Because if they are, this is great, you know? But if they're not, and that's the rumors that we were hearing, right? Like I think it was at the combine. They were like, "We're done with," that was the rumor.
We were talking about this on the show even after the regular season ended with the Giants. Yeah. What happens with Daniel Jones? We spoke a lot about that, and where does this team?
The problem for me with Daniel Jones is the health, and because he's not a bad quarterback when he plays. It's that he gets hurt all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're injury prone, you can't be a franchise quarterback. It's as simple as that. Problem is, though, is when he's healthy, he could get them to the playoffs, and we've seen.
He won a playoff game. He won a playoff game. I mean, it's obviously he's got something, but
they might still draft a quarterback at some point. To stick as like a.
It's not the same though as with the number 6 pick, though, right? It's not the same.
No. But you could still get Spencer Rattler still out there. Michael.
Sure. And it's a very fair point that they were talking about this on the radio today. The NFL draft is unlike, let's say, the NBA draft or certainly the NHL draft, where after a certain number, the NBA draft, the second round is nobody makes it, right? In the NHL draft, after you can get to the third round, fourth round, you might be something. But the NFL draft, every pick means something. So the point is that you still could go something. I wanted to ask you guys a general question. I'll get to baseball in a few minutes. I promise I'm going to get to baseball. But NFL-wise, I thought one team to me that stood out, and I'm not quite sure where they're going after some of the moves they made in the offseason. Speaking of, I know locally here, technically New York's only team, the Buffalo Bills. What did you guys make of the Buffalo Bills so far? Because I can't seem to get a grasp of where they're going off the shelf. And I see Alan Michaels is laughing. Alan Michaels, he seems to know how I think these days. But Alan Michaels, you want to laugh and you want to tell me why?
They really traded their pick to the Chiefs to give them one of the fastest people we've seen.
Yes.
To an already pretty good receiving core if Rashee Rice gets all of his things figured out and settled out. It's going to be a receiving core of potentially Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, with still Travis Kelce at tight end, Pacheco, McKinnon in the backfield. And
they gave up 28. They gave up the 28th pick. That's why I'm asking you. What did you make of what the Buffalo Bills did?
I have no earthly idea what they're doing at this point. Honestly, it blew the whole thing up. You give Von Miller, a 33-year-old Von Miller the bag. I mean, they absolutely took their Super Bowl contention, crumpled it up, and threw it out the window.
Maybe we should bring the Staying Trendy show for this weekend for the NFL draft version and ask the Buffalo Bills what were they doing.
That division is so tough already, and you are just making it harder on yourself with every single move you seem to make.
For you guys, Chris and Big T, what did you guys think about that? You give a pick away, and it's a valuable pick. I mean, you're getting this. You got the first pick of the second round, but
so far, I mean, they picked up Keon Coleman, the receiver from Florida State, who I liked a lot. I mean, he's like a first-round talent. Cole Bishop, the safety out of Utah, that was a guy that I thought the Jets were going to target because they had him for a private workout and all this kind of stuff. So they really liked him, but they got him in the second round, which I was actually surprised. And then they picked up Dwayne Carter, the defensive tackle from Duke, who's solid. But like you said, they went through a lot of changes this offseason. I mean, their whole DB room, they basically gutted. So maybe this is kind of a rebuild on the fly type of situation for the Bills. But like you said, also too, I mean, this is a really tough division. Outside of the Patriots, the top 3 teams are going to be.
Yeah, Miami, the Jets, and Buffalo. I think that where they are in terms of the ground is not that far between all 3 of them now. I mean, the Jets, I would think with Rodgers, you're going to be improved, and they still were 7-10. It wasn't like they were 3-14. So, okay, we know that, and we know Miami, we know their story, and Buffalo takes a step back. And I do want to go back to the Denver Broncos for a second for you gentlemen, because obviously the Denver Broncos, they get a quarterback that used to play for the New York Jets, and then they draft a quarterback and they get rid of a quarterback, obviously famously in the offseason. Where does a team like that go? Big T. They obviously have the coach with the pedigree, but they almost seem to be like, to quote one of our podcasts here on Sportzwire Radio, a work in progress. I mean, Alan talked about the Denver Broncos before, but what did you think about them and just where they go? They pick up Zach Wilson. They have Bo Nix. They have Sean Payton. He's not there to rebuild. And where do they go from here, you think?
As for where they go is a great question, because I think it's hard to even answer that when I don't even know if the Broncos know where they're going. I feel like that they're back to kind of the wall in the quarterback position. I don't want to be the guy that sits up here and blasts Bo Nix. Don't get me wrong. Like, I have no problem with Bo Nix. I think he can be pretty decent. I'm not sure how great he'll be, but I think he can be a good quarterback in the future. I just think that the Broncos went wrong with picking two Mr. Nice guys in your quarterback room. I mean, you got scared Zach Wilson, who has showed signs in the past, don't get me wrong, and then you drafted Bo Nix, and these guys just seem like they want to be comfortable. I feel like they could have had something else. It could have been anything else in the first round besides Bo Nix that could have helped out their team much more than what it actually is.
But Sean Payton is a coach rebuild. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning coach, and he doesn't know losing. I don't understand how you have two quarterbacks that really. I mean, Wilson, we know what would happen here, and then you have Nix, who again is a rookie. So I'm assuming somebody here is going to have to play for this team.
Man, well, that's actually what I was just leading to. Instead of it being the two Mr. Nice Guy rules, I was hoping that they were going to pick the best talent available on the board at the time instead of picking that quarterback need, and then saving your pick, man. Get Spencer Rattler. Get somebody that's going to go in there and grab the ball and be like, hey, Zach, move the fuck out of the way. Let me get in here. Let me do this. Bo Nix, I just don't think is that type of guy, man. Spencer Rattler's got that attitude and that drive to be able to go in there, do what he wants when he wants to do it, and it's possible to do that. And I do think he has a bigger ceiling than Bo Nix does. I think they could have made a lot better decisions. That's what I'll say.
You want to say something, Alan Michaels?
Yeah, that's a dumpster fire. That quarterback room is horrendous. That quarterback room was Ben DiNucci, Zach Wilson, and Bo Nix. Are you
saying that Atomic Titan could maybe compete for reps there based on those quarterbacks?
Jared Stidham too. He's in there. He's in the quarterback room too.
Yeah, I mean, there's
these guys are like, oh my goodness, for Sean Payton. He's a Hall of Fame coach.
Sean Payton likes him.
The thing is, you're eating Russell Wilson's contract anyway. You're eating that. So why not keep him on the team and at least mentor some of these guys? You have no mentor.
And you know what? Despite all the things that the Denver Broncos went through, they really weren't that far away from the playoffs. They were 8-9. You could have ran it back with Russell Wilson, and I think you could have maybe had a shot to be in the playoffs.
That was going to
There's
go.
No.
I understand that.
None. This is
but
a
you know what?
recipe for disaster.
I'm not impressed that much by Bo Nix either, but obviously Sean Payton was, right? Sean Payton likes him a lot, and Sean Payton's a Super Bowl winning head coach. Right?
Absolutely.
So we have to kind of, I don't want to say give him a shot, but we have to say, okay, all right, if this guy likes this quarterback. Now, remember, they didn't have a second round pick either, so maybe they didn't want to take a chance at Bo Nix falling, to someone else. So they said, hey, listen, let's grab him now. If they obviously believed in him that much to draft him that high. So I'm with you guys too. I don't see it, but and I know a lot of the reports were saying that, he's probably going to be a backup quarterback in this league. That's like his ceiling. So,
and you draft him in the top 10, just outside the top 10. That's what I don't understand is you use the pick and you've already got quarterbacks.
Remember that.
True. And the other thing,
maybe they would have took a shot at him falling to the second round.
And the other thing I think that I also heard today on the radio was this was the most picks for the most in the first round ever for the amount of quarterbacks selected. I think that's an interesting stat there. A lot of teams, obviously Mr. Michaels certainly aired his grievances toward the Atlanta Falcons. We knew the Vikings selected a quarterback. Obviously, we just spoke about yes, I got the thought. I got the hot take there. You certainly had those hot takes. You should have used some of those hot takes though to get Ref Carr's attention though, but different conversation. You're going to kill me for that. I know that. But obviously, the point is that, a lot of teams draft, the Bears, we expected, obviously, we talked about that. Commanders draft a quarterback, kind of expected that after their debacle with quarterbacks. And, and then I think the one team, maybe the biggest loser, the Carolina Panthers, or what?
Man, actually, I'm actually I wouldn't say biggest loser. I mean, this is gonna sound really bad, man, but I think Atlanta really, really fumbled with.
Atlanta made no sense to me. You bring in one quarterback and draft another. I gotta be honest, Mr. Michaels. I'm gonna get to baseball in a minute. I will definitely want to get to baseball. I do want to talk about baseball, but I really don't understand how the Atlanta Falcons just signed Kirk Cousins to all this money and then drafted a quarterback
that high.
An old quarterback.
Now, now in that boardroom, right? In that war room for the Falcons, what were they smoking in there?
Everything. All at the same time.
It doesn't make sense because Atlanta's not a winning team. If they were a winning team and they said, okay, you know what, we got to think about the future. In 2 years, Kirk Cousins, we could cut him loose. Whatever.
Yeah.
I get it, but they're not a winning team, so they still need pieces. It would be like the Jets drafting a quarterback at that spot. It would make no sense right now.
Well, I think the Jets at least have a defense. There's a core there. I agree with you. The Falcons, I don't understand. I'm just trying to understand how I'm in the management there. I'm in the front office, right? And again, I know nothing. I know nothing about anything. And I'm just trying to understand how you sign one quarterback and then draft another.
You signed the 35-year-old quarterback coming off
$100+ million.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of this, by the way. One of our loyal listeners here has a comment. She actually is listening to us, and as Miss Angela Pink out there from beautiful, I don't know if it's so beautiful these days, but it's still Midwood, Brooklyn, beautiful Midwood, Brooklyn. I still want to certainly not disparage Midwood, Brooklyn, but she wanted to say Atlanta not only fumbles on the field, but also on the drafts, meaning she kind of referenced the Super Bowl there. We didn't want to go there, but Angela went there, but that's what Angela wanted to say. She's listening to us out there on Twitter land and the Xverse, and she said that Atlanta fumbles also on the draft. So it's a franchise that can't get out of their way almost.
You know what? Hey, to quote somebody who used to be on the show, that
oh boy, go for it.
Right, is the dumbest team around. Right?
He called them the dumbest team around. We said they were the definition of NFL purgatory, and basically that's kind of where they are permanently.
Right? He wasn't wrong.
And Joe Dell wants to point out the Atlanta Falcons were most likely smoking the blueberry. I didn't know if that was a reference for smoking. I would think I didn't know that, but I wouldn't know because I don't smoke. People will always say, "Well, there's like all you do is smoke." But I actually have never smoked in my life. But that's why because my voice is like a helium balloon. That's why my voice always sounds like Geddy Lee, the famous lead singer of Rush. Every time I do my loud intros for our wrestlers to come on, it's almost like Geddy Lee has a helium balloon. But yeah, the Atlanta Falcons. I'm still trying to understand that one, Alan Michaels. So that was, really the Atlanta Falcons. Just, I don't know.
Man, to add on to that real quick, I just don't know. Like, it felt like Atlanta wasn't even playing for their own team, man. Like, in Atlanta's position, watching the draft, kind of like what Chris said, like you have other pieces that you need to address, and they don't do it, and you're kind of wondering, like, why did they do this particular thing? I mean, yeah, you don't want another team to land this guy, don't get me wrong. But why not trade back and just get your future picks? Because it's not like Atlanta is down, like, terribly. They were a middle-of-the-pack team last year.
NFL purgatory. Listen, NFL purgatory. They went into the last game of the season for what it was worth, mathematically alive to win their division. I agree with you.
It just doesn't make sense to me, man. They could have used these picks later on, but instead they're going to suffer from not only this ridiculous contract that you gave Kirk, but 2 years from now when Michael Penix is playing, you're going to realize that you're still going to be paying Kirk Cousins to play for your team, and he's no longer going to be there anymore. Not only that, you got to worry about trading him off, getting assets back when you really could have just did all this by trading.
And you have a quarterback unlike Aaron Rodgers. Again, I don't want to really defend Aaron Rodgers that much, but Kirk Cousins. We've said it here. I've been on the air 5.5 years, and at least of the 4 of those years, Kirk Cousins has, one playoff win in his career, right? Is it one playoff victory? One.
And think about it. They could have used that pick and got Rome Odunze. Think about him. On
Exactly.
that
You could have traded down. No, I think that it's a valuable point. You could have used that pick to draft down and get a couple of picks and add, and really improve your team. But we'll come back to the draft in a second. I know Rob Moroska is dying to talk about the New York Mets. There ain't really much to talk about with the New York Mets at the moment. But actually, before I do that, Angela wants to come in and say one more thing about the Falcons before Rob Moroska gives me the Met report. And Angela wants to say exactly, why not make a trade to improve the team's game? Falcons management ain't too smart, it seems. Well, I think I had pointed out that the Atlanta Falcons management, Angela, must be smoking something that totally is got them thinking about something else. Or I'm trying to think of the famous Led Zeppelin song, Dazed and Confused. Joe Dell, maybe you've covered that song if you're listening to us out there. Dazed and Confused. That was, in fact, the first song I learned on the bass guitar once upon a time. Dazed and Confused, because the Atlanta Falcons and their general manager and their franchise's history also seem to be dazed and confused. That seems to be the theme there. And Angela also wanted to say the same thing. She had the same point that she just made. Okay, fair enough. We'll come back to that in about 10 or 15 minutes. But Rob Moroska, New York Mets, last week everybody was like, this Met team's doing great, and they've kind of hit a little bit of a wall, and Mets lose a tough one. They did win one in San Francisco on Wednesday, but the Mets seem like kind of like most of baseball these days, with the few exceptions of a few teams. And one side of it or another will come to baseball for about 5 or 10 minutes, and the Mets are now back to the middle of the pack, but they seem like they will be getting some help very soon, though.
Yeah, well, JD Martinez, his first game tonight, he had a single, double, and an RBI. So you know what? They have some help there. They came back to earth. They started that West Coast trip pretty good, taking 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. But then on Sunday, they got their butts kicked by the Dodgers. Then they
10-0. We expected that one, kind of.
It was bound to happen. And then they lost 2 against the Giants, and they won the rubber game. So they had a for them, they had a good West Coast trip, 500.
Let's see. We've had years with the West Coast trips. The Mets, if they win 1 out of 9, you're like, oh boy.
so they did pretty well. Tonight, I thought they were gonna win. Coming into tonight, I thought against
back home at Citi Field. Yep.
Yeah, back home. JD Martinez's first game. The Cardinals aren't doing too well themselves, but you know what? They're not really hitting now. Alonso's not hitting. Lindor's going in and out. He's getting a couple of hits, then he's not getting them. Then he's not hitting. So, that's a problem. He's got to be consistent. I mean, this contract, he let's face it, he had one decent year so far, right? The first year he played for the Mets, we were giving him a break. He
wasn't bad last year. I mean, 21 was bad. 22 was very good. Last year, I mean, statistically, the batting average was low, but the numbers were good. I mean, I think that can't kill him on the home runs and RBIs. Can't kill him.
No. But he's got to start. He's got to start hitting. It's if he hits, that lineup is so much better. It's like
I think the hope is that Martinez can come in here and spark these guys up and see more pitches. And they started the year 0-5 and they're now 13-12. So 13 in the last 20 they've won. I mean, they've hit a wall here. Yes, I agree. They've lost 4 or 5, but they had a very nice run before that. I mean, but they're going to have to beat teams like the Cardinals. I mean, the Cardinals are obviously struggling in a weak Central Division, and you need to do well here at home. You have a homestand. You were on the road, and I agree. Maybe the weather warms up the second half of the weekend. Maybe that'll help them. The weather's been inconsistent. The weather's been completely, absolutely horrible in New York. I mean, the weather here. I don't know what it's like for you guys out in Tennessee, but in New York, it's just been even today. It's only 50-something degrees. It's not really warmed up weather. Joe Dell wants to point out before I come back to Chris. Yes, that's a blues in an E pentatonic scale, which is dazed and confused. Yes, because it's dun 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 dun. Yep, it's a very slow blues song. John Paul Jones on the bass. Lindor is worth his weight in lead. Okay, that's a good one. I still think he hits a little bit more than that, but he loves Starling Marte. Yeah, Starling Marte was great a couple years ago, but Starling Marte, obviously the Mets are going to need, but I'll come back to the Mets in a second. I'll work some other guys in here in a second. But Chris, Yankees have their own struggles. But again, 17-10. They didn't get off to the strong start. They've come back to earth a little bit. So Mets lost today. Yankees lost a tough one to the Milwaukee Brewers, who have been, a pleasant surprise. I mean, it's interesting. I know we're saying, don't look at baseball standings right now, but the Cleveland Guardians are 18-8. And the Milwaukee Brewers are 17-8, two teams that have had a lot of success recently, but pared down, and these teams have found ways to win. And Chris, what did you think of the Yankees this week? And obviously today's a tough loss.
Yeah, well, splitting with the Oakland A's at home was not a good start.
And Oakland beat Baltimore, though, by the way, tonight. So the Oakland A's, something's with the Oakland A's, by the way. Maybe they're listening to Rob Molaska rant about them on Twitter. Who knows?
Their closer is unhittable. I'll tell you that right now. He's throwing like 103 miles an hour, so you're not touching that kid.
There could be some trade bait there for sure. That franchise.
May as well, right? But the Yankees are just not scoring runs. I mean, they're big bats. Judge.
So it's a lot about Judge. Yep.
Torres. All these guys are just not getting it done. It's a slow start, but it's like the third week now. So something's got to give eventually. One of these guys got to get going. Obviously, the only guy that's really hitting is Soto. Stanton's hitting a little bit too, but for the most part, the big guns are just not getting it done. So until that changes, you're going to see a game like tonight. They're just not going to score runs and win games. And that was the problem against the A's. That's the reason why they split with them, because the two games they lost, I think they scored 2 runs, maybe 1 run.
I was listening to the game Monday afternoon, which was a 1:00 game. And again, the weather here Monday, it felt like it was not, instead of April, was it 21st to 22nd? It felt more like January 22nd here in New York. And I don't know, I think the Yankees were shut out in Monday's game, and then they lost and scored, like you said, 2 runs, if I'm not mistaken. And Baltimore actually only scored 2 runs against Oakland as well tonight. So Oakland, again, they're not going anywhere, but they're actually playing pretty hard right now.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I thought Oakland was going to kind of come close to the Mets losing record this year, but
I don't think so this year. They're going to probably lose 90 games, but they ain't losing 120. As a matter of fact, before I get to a comment, maybe everybody will laugh at this, it's the Houston Astros that might be coming close of all teams to that record, because they're 7-19. I mean, when do we start panicking with the Houston Astros for you two baseball guys? When do we start panicking with them?
Soon, because they're an older team. And they have a lot of injuries with their rotation, and I think it's catching up to them. But listen, they still got time to come back. So,
well, the division's weak right now. I mean, they're not like 15 games back because Texas and Seattle are only 500. So, okay, you're alive, but 7-19 is pretty alarming. I mean, I don't know of too many teams that have gone 7-19 in baseball that have gone back and went into the postseason or a World Series. I don't know too many. I mean,
if they're double figures down by the All-Star break, or below 500 at the All-Star break, I'd be concerned. But
they're going to be sellers.
Yeah, exactly. They might be.
But, I mean, you ought to be. I mean, right? I mean, but you're 7-19, so just.
And you got a couple of big free agents too. You got Kyle Tucker and you got Bregman that are both going to be free agents after this year. So, I mean, if they're going to, if like Rob said, if they're going to sell, then I would think those 2 guys would be 2 guys you're going to sell.
And the Yankees and Mets dodged a big bullet on Blake Snell, huh?
Big time. I mean, the guy didn't have a spring training, so I don't know what the Giants were doing. I would have thought the Giants were going to, kind of take their time on him and just throw him in the minors for a couple of weeks to get some starts in, and then bring him up. To me, it made no sense to rush him like this. So, now he's hurt. So who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, the Blake Snell. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody was talking about Snell. He's the Cy Young Award winner. We were talking about him. Mets signed him, Yankees signed him, and it seems like an albatross. And we were talking last week. The Mets hit Yamamoto up, and everybody else was talking about him as well. And let me get to a funny comment for everybody here. Maybe Shane Davidson will even laugh at this one. One of our buddies, J.R. Wynn, who I know, who was a WCE fan, which is, if you're a backyard wrestling fan, is really not saying that much these days. Really, is they're on the lower totem pole of covers, unlike the company that Mr. Michaels works for in Tennessee Backyard Wrestling. By the way, Mr. Michaels, I've got my TBW shirt on, by the way, just for you. Like that, right? Representing the company, by the way. You like that, right? But he wants to bring back Roller Jam. He wants Roller Jam to come back.
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, do people want us to? I mean, would you want us to cover Roller Jam on Sportswire? I mean, is there such a thing of covering a Roller Jam? I mean, I guess. I mean, we're doing JR. We're doing an eating contest on May 24th, 10 p.m. Eastern time. I mean, I'm sure you'd like to tune in for that. It's probably more entertaining than some other stuff you've seen recently in the world of WCE. But yeah, Roller Jam. You never know. I guess never say never, right? Roller Jam was once on, I think it was the then Nashville Network. There was a thing, Alan Michaels, called the Nashville Network, TNN, the Nashville Network. And they used to play Roller Jam before ECW, because ECW, for a very brief period, was on TNN. They would play, it was the Roller Jam before or after it, but yeah, maybe we'll cover Roller Jam. Alan Michaels and Big T, maybe you guys should do the eating contest on roller skates, right? What do you think about that? Would that be a good idea? No, not a good.
I don't know if that would be a good idea.
No, not a good idea. Fair play. All right, fair enough. For you, Rob, anything else on the baseball spectrum you want to talk about before I bring in Randy Dillon to kind of give some maybe sayonara Fat Lady Sings for a couple of hockey teams? I'm going to bring Randy back in here, but anything else baseball you want to discuss?
His Washington Capitals, good night.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's going to come on and, talk about that. But, anything else baseball-wise, obviously, you want to talk about for a few minutes?
I just wanted to say what Chris said about that A's closer, Mason Miller. I cannot believe how fast that kid pitches. I mean, Chris, did you see him?
Oh, yeah. No, when I was watching the game. I mean, the guy throws seeds. You're not touching that guy. Juan Soto looked like a Little League hitter against him.
It's just, the Yankees were like salivating after that series, wishing that they could have him. But as far as the Mets go, I'm not worried about the Mets right now. It's too early to panic. The Atlanta Braves, though, never lose. So when
18-6, yeah. Well, the Atlanta Braves do not lose. No, they definitely don't.
No, they were, they didn't gain any ground. So we'll see what happens. I'm just, I'm not worried right now. I'm happy that Martinez is on the team, and we'll see what happens.
And also, I wanted to give a big plug to the TSF Takes boys, obviously, because they're on Instagram, and you need to go follow them because they do a great job of supporting us on Sportswire Radio, and you see a lot of Alan Michaels photos there and videos, and they're going to have more of that, and they certainly also have some stuff here. A lot of our clips on Sportswire Radio, by the way, are on their page. So if you want to follow the TSF Takes group, here is a very simple way to do it. They're on Instagram at TSF Takes. You can also check them out in a couple of different ways through YouTube, and they're a group of friends who have hit takes across all sports, and they really do, because they actually have a clip of us with them on their TikTok page that has nearly 30,000 views, and they just crossed 1,000 followers on TikTok. So make sure you support the TSF Takes boys, and they actually shared some of my most recent videos. And yes, maybe I should take over the TSF Takes. No, I'm only kidding. It's a joke. Don't take too serious from it. But obviously, check them out on Instagram. You can also follow Rob Maraska. He's at R Maraska on Twitter. Maraska, CP7NY, all of his great platforms here. And we are talking about all things related here in the world of sports. And I'll certainly come back to some more plugs. But we'll wait for Randy to come on here in a few minutes. But before we do that, I'll come back to the rest of the guys, certainly Mr. Michaels and Big T. And anything else NFL draft thoughts you wanted to share with the audience? Well, if we get ready for Randy Dillon to come on here and say sayonara.
Yes, Ricky Purcell the 49ers first round pick. Yeah,
Yes.
I've been watching some film on that guy. I've been watching some highlights. Saw a take that Steve Smith Sr. had on him. And I don't know if y'all know about Steve Smith and his prediction receivers, but that dude predicted Cooper Kupp to have a breakout, little bit there. He did. Ricky Purcell's a great little route runner, and honestly, he reminds me a lot of Brandon Ayuk. So I honestly feel like Ayuk's not going to be in San Francisco for too much longer. I think, honestly, they're looking to trade him.
That's a good take. Anything else you wanted to say, Mr. Big T?
Yeah, man. As for the Packers, man, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but me and Mikey got to talk about it a little bit in the chat. I didn't think it was a good idea for them to pass on Kool-Aid. I don't know if anybody kept up with that or saw that in real time, but I don't know, man. That's definitely going to come back to bite them. Obviously, they still got a good pick, probably one of the best, if not the best linebacker in the draft. I do think that Kool-Aid could have definitely helped out Jair, and it could have been a very, very solid secondary had they picked him there. I just didn't think it was a great idea to move back.
That's a good point. Also, want to get to a couple of comments, and Randy's going to be with us here to spend about maybe 15 or so minutes on hockey. First of all, J.R. Wind, if you're looking for other backyard friends, Mr. Michaels actually wrestles one. Tennessee Backyard Wrestling, the mothership of all backyard federations, who have nearly 7,500 subscribers on YouTube. And, of course, I'm wearing their shirt, and we're very good friends with the company there. So check them out. He is also the Classic Championship Wrestling and Entertainment Championship Wrestling's chief spokesman and Tribal Nation Commissioner of Commissioners. Thank you for that. I know I'm supposed to have done coverage for that at some point, but message me on Facebook, and maybe we can work in the month of June. This month coming up in May is a little tough for me, but maybe in June we can do something there. And Joe Dell's got a good point on contracts, which I think is related to Mr. Lindor. When you have a $340 million contract, you should get a homer a game, no exaggerations, $340 million. Come on, man. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Met fans are ever going to be fully satisfied with Lindor. I understand that point. It's kind of the same thing with Stanton and the Yankees. You have to look at what these guys are paid. But even Yamamoto, right? Yamamoto got even more money than that. And obviously we spoke about with Ohtani. But, contracts are just unfortunately what they are. But speaking of things of what they are, we are joined here once again by Randy Dillon. Randy, nice to meet you for the first time on Sportzwire Radio. Hope you'll give us some hot takes like Alan Michaels did. But unfortunately, Randy, we're both in the same predicament in the NHL because you're a Washington Capitals fan. I'm a New York Islanders fan. In fact, Chris Pizzea is also a New York Islanders fan. And I'm wondering, are we going to be saying goodbye to our teams and getting ready to say the fat lady has sung on us? Or maybe we can come back here and at least win one game with both of our teams?
So for the Islanders, you look at 2 of the 3 games, they actually played some good hockey.
I agree. And it wasn't the second game, by the way. It was the first and the third game.
But game 3 and game 1, they played good hockey. Do the Islanders deserve a better fate? Yes. I think Carolina won. Freddie Anderson was outstanding game.
He made some great saves in the third game. I was listening to the whole game.
One line down to the Islanders. I think it comes back to that old ad. They just can't get that big goal scorer to step through. I think that's been the adage there. And Chris, as I said, special teams, the Islanders power play has it come through. The Washington Capitals, I think, are more likely to get swept because after today's game, Trevor Van Riemsdyk took a nasty hit from Matt Rampy. He left the game. They're now, if Van Riemsdyk out, that's now 3 of the 6 defensemen the Capitals are missing. They don't have the depth at center. It's a very young team, an old team that doesn't have experience. The Rangers have everything up and down their lineup locked and sealed. You can't find many flaws with that team except Brempy taking off people's heads. But I think unless the Capitals can get them defensemen back, they play a strong game. Charlie Lindgren can steal one. I think most likely for the Capitals, it's game over. The Islanders, I don't know. I think they can maybe push this series along, but they have to get some goals. They have to score some goals and take a lead.
I want to ask you about that. I'm sure, and we'll certainly get to the other guys in a few minutes, but I do want to talk about this. And I'm curious, Randy, on your thoughts. I'm sure Chris will have an opinion because he's an Islanders fan like myself. This is a team, right, that they've had this core for a while together. I mean, they've added players, Pajot, Horvat as examples of guys. Dobson's become a big player on this team. And the second half of this run, they've also added, obviously, Sorokin has been a part of it. They've changed goaltenders. But I don't feel like I look at this team and say, you know what, this team is really a Stanley Cup worthy team. Now they get into the playoffs, they get red hot. They obviously don't lose in regulation the last 2 weeks of the season. They make the playoffs. I guess you're playing with house money, but what is really the future of this team? Because I think ultimately at the end of the day, by the time we're on the air next week, the likelihood of the New York Islanders playing hockey is probably very slim. There's always a chance, but it's very slim. But where is the future of this team? Because you got guys like Matt Martin, who's a free agent. You know what you're going to do with him. Varlamov, right? Obviously, we know his story. We got a lot of these guys on this team. It's a team that's been together for a long time. And, I don't really get that it's going to change. Offensively, they're challenged. Their special teams are challenged, especially at power play. And, you've got a decision on goaltender with Varlamov. You've got other guys that are coming up to a certain point in their contracts. I mean, where do you think this team goes? Because part of me thinks that this team is on the back end of their run as kind of a I guess you would say, deep playoff. Because I never thought they were a Stanley Cup contender, even in the 2 conference final years. But where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I think they're going to be in the same spot. They're going to be a bubble team hovering for a playoff spot or just there.
But do you tear that down at some point? Do you just kind of go with it? And
I don't like. The thing is that I did an episode. You got me and our good old pal Kim Mosaic.
Kimberly Moisa, yes, Kimberly Moisa, who celebrated a birthday not too long ago. Yes,
Lamoriello is doing with this team. It seems like the direction of this team. They don't need a full tear it down rebuild because they do have some good pieces in Horvat, Barzal, Sorokin. They have some good young defensemen.
Nelson's still a good player, 35 goals. You got that as a chip. Pajot's a decent player. Dobson is a borderline Norris Trophy candidate this year. He did something that very few defensemen do in the franchise. But then, you've got this fourth line, Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck. They're not the same. You've brought in some other guys. Okay, but it doesn't, even Horvat this year. Horvat,
agents, right? So
what's that?
Martin and Clutterbuck are both
yeah.
Right?
They're both UFAs, and listen, they're good role players, but I think the game now for players like Martin Clutterbuck,
not the same as it was 10 years ago. That line E equals MC squared. The best fourth line in hockey. It's not. They're on the back end of it, and I just was curious what you thought on that verse. Rather than I think the Capitals were kind of a surprise to make the playoffs. This Islander team. They were in the same spot last year, and they were in the same spot the year prior. They were a fringe playoff team, and they made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Do they bring back Patrick Waugh?
I think Patrick Waugh comes back. Definitely their head coach, because I don't see them really looking elsewhere. And I think you have to give him a full year of what he's done. But I think they have to make some move to this team, because you look at the team Patrick Waugh had in Colorado, where they were the top one of the best team in the NHL in his first year, where they had speed, the likes of a young
2015, right?
2014, 13-14, Nathan McKinnon, a young Mac Duchene, a young Ryan O'Reilly. They had guys that could put the puck in the back net, had some skill. They need to. But
the team doesn't have really those. Okay, Barzal had his best offensive year since he was a rookie. Horvat was okay. Palmieri had a really good second half. I think Nelson's become a great player, but the rest of the team aren't skilled. They don't have it. Dobson was good this year. Pulak's never that. I mean, I'm going to hold off on that thought, but I have a comment for you, Mr. Michaels, because your boss actually wants to say hello. You up your boss?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Alan Michaels' boss is actually here, and he wants to say evening, Tom and Jensen as well. Welcome back, Mr. Trendsetter Alan Michaels. Do you want to say anything to your boss before I come back to the hockey talk for a few minutes? Anything you want to say to dear old boss?
That's a good guy right there. He's a Titans fan, man.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
And they had a good pick, in my opinion, man. I don't know. It's looking pretty good in Tennessee.
Do you think that because he's your boss that he'll get an extra Titan ticket or two, and maybe that he'll give you a comp now that you're one of his big signings, and he gave you a shot, kid, obviously, as he said it on yesterday's show?
Hey, I'm the trendsetter. I'd be giving him a ticket. That's what
but he's the boss. But he's your boss, though. He's your boss.
Hey, whatever you gotta do, you slide me a title push, I'll sell you some tickets.
I don't think you can get away with saying that. But by the way, your boss wants to say, which this is why I love your boss. This is why your boss is in a Hall of Fame. He says, "Don't forget my Steelers, man." See, he's a Steelers fan, not a Titans fan.
Well, you know what? My respect just went down.
So fast, my friend, because we root for the Steelers on this platform. So not so fast there, my friend.
No.
Steelers, I'm very happy about the Steelers. And we love Mr. Allen, by the way. Thank you, Mr. Allen. I got to get Mr. Allen back on the show. By the way, congratulations to your company, by the way, you work for now. Yesterday was the 7th year anniversary of your company, by the way, Mr. Michaels.
I know. Going strong, man. Going strong.
Because you came back, that's why. No, I'm just kidding, actually.
Nah.
They actually had their 7th year anniversary in spite of you coming back. It was a joke. Okay, but obviously, we'll come back to that. Okay, so Islanders, you feel aren't Randy going to change Waz coach, and they're going to come back mostly with this core and bring back most of the players. I think Chris makes a point. You probably agree with Clutterbuck, Martin, don't come back. Varlamov, does he come back?
I think he signed for another year or two. I think he has another year or two.
What about trading Brock Nelson? He's going into the last year of his deal.
Yeah. This is one of probably the interesting for the Islanders because they could get a haul for Brock Nelson right now.
He's a very good player. 35 goals this year, 30 goals 3 years in a row. He's a really good player.
Right? I think now's the time to do it because are you going to really sign him to an extension? I'd rather get something for him now.
It's a good point. And by the way, you should probably hear my funny Brock Nelson story. Well, not so funny Brock Nelson story. You want to hear it? Because when I was a season ticket holder, it was 2 years we had to meet the team. But I went to the first one because the first one was in Brooklyn, and the player that was probably the two players that were the most nastiest to meet were Brock Nelson and Cal Clutterbuck. Brock Nelson was totally standoffish, didn't want to talk. He was I don't even think I got his autograph. He was like that. This was a season ticket holders event. He was total didn't even it was almost he was bothered to be there. Yeah. Casey Zizekas was probably the nicest guy, conversely. Casey Zizekas was probably the nice. Anders Lee was very cool. But I was not a Brock Nelson fan after that. But Randy, your Capitals, you say basically, you don't think they'll win another game, or
unless they get two of their three defensemen back. If they're going the game tomorrow on Sunday without Sandin or Jensen, and I don't think Van Riemsdyk is going to play, but they don't have Sandin and Jensen, they're not going to win because the defense is just taking a beating.
Are we looking at the end of the Tampa Bay Lightning's run as we speak?
I think we are. I think this is the most astonishing thing because this was the one team Boston probably didn't want to play in the first round. They'd rather take their luck with Toronto, and Florida probably wanted to take. A lot of people picked Tampa Bay to beat Florida in this series, and it's 3-0 Florida right now. This is something amazing. I think the Lightning's still going to be a playoff team, but I think as a contender, I think their days of contending are done.
And what do you think now with Boston-Toronto? Boston wins game 3, and the pressure's back on Toronto once again.
Who's starting game 4? That's my question.
Did you want to say something, Alan, before I come back to that? Did you want to say something, Alan?
No, I was messing around.
Well, I'll come back to you, sure. But so Boston-Toronto, what do you think there? Then obviously this is kind of really the series right now.
It's a big moment for Toronto because they need this. Because if they go down 3-1 against Boston, they're not.
They're on the ropes.
Come back to win this, but I think for Boston, the biggest question is who they start because they didn't start Jeremy Swayman game 2. They went to Linus Omar.
And I'm curious also now. Obviously, I think Vancouver beat Nashville tonight, and Thatcher Demko. Now that's interesting to me because Thatcher Demko is out of the series. How big of a win was it tonight for Vancouver?
Watching that game watching the game tonight, and they played one of the most tightest defensive games they played all year. They only had 12 shots. They really committed to a defense. So
they tried the Islanders' effort in game 2, but actually came out with a victory.
They capitalized on the power play, but I think for the Canucks, they know this is not the regular season where you can kind of play your way. In the playoffs, if you don't have your star goalie in net, it's hard enough to win games. But if you're not literally playing shutdown, lockdown hockey, Nashville wasn't clean tonight as well. But they had some breaks, but Vancouver, they played a very tight game where they didn't.
And what do you think now? Dallas was the top seed in the Western Conference, and the Stanley Cup champions are up 2-0 on them. What do you make of that there with Vegas?
Dallas needs their big stars to come up. You need Rupo Hintz. You need Jake Robertson to really make an impact in Joe Pavelski in this game. But Jake Ottinger, I think, is the wildest thing in this series because since last year's playoff, he's allowed, I think, 3 or more goals in a lot of his playoff games. So he really needs to.
Stone comes back there, and all of a sudden they get jump started in Game 1 Vegas, and it's a Vegas team that really limped into the playoffs. They only clinched, I think, like 4 to 5 days before the regular season ends, and they're up 2-0. They win the first 2 games on the road. I mean, is that surprising to you?
I think it's surprising. It is surprising because Game 2, Dallas really brought it. They just couldn't finish, and I think the fact that they're not giving them anything is really surprising because Mark Stone adds a different element to the game, but I just feel like Vegas had amped their level up to another gear.
I want to go back to Vancouver for a second. Is Rick Tocchet the coach of the year in the NHL this year?
I think so. I think early in the year was John Tortorella, but I think Rick Tocchet
You can't, Tortorella, after the way they collapsed.
After the Flyers collapsed, he lost it.
You can't give him that. But the job that Tocchet has done with that franchise, returning to the playoffs for the first time in Vancouver in nearly a decade, and now up 2-1 with Thatcher Demko out for the series, I think that's a tremendous part. And Joe Dell wants to say Tampa Bay has a weak defense.
Yeah, no Mikhail Sergachev, that definitely hurts. But I think you look at Game 1 and you look at Game 2, where the Lightning just couldn't get some goals. Like Bobrovsky has been outstanding. Look at that Game 2 save we saw, and him just doing a.
I was speaking with one of our listeners off the air, and that's what he reminded me. He said, it's Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky's the whole key to that series. Now Vasilevskiy said, if Bobrovsky plays well and he can keep Florida, Tampa's offense at bay, Florida is going to go and have a short work and look out of the Tampa's short work from them. And I didn't really think much of that comment, but that's a fair point. Are Edmonton and Los Angeles and Winnipeg, Colorado, the 2 series, you say those series are going the distance?
They'll definitely go the distance right now because Edmonton is going to depend on Stuart Skinner. We saw.
And they're playing as we speak right now. So
they're up 4-1, but we saw in Game 4, LA made a little bit. Game 1, LA made a little bit comeback near the end, and then Game 2 it was a back and forth, and Edmonton couldn't get a save. I think for Edmonton, they can win this thing in 5, but if they don't get some saves, they're going to allow LA to hang on.
So then, realistically, the one series you see that could go 7 games is Colorado and Winnipeg.
Colorado and Winnipeg because Colorado's bringing it, but Connor Hellebuck gets hot. It's going to be.
And that's my Stanley Cup pick, the Winnipeg Jets, Randy. I could see them go out in the first round because these 2 teams are that good. Colorado won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, and Winnipeg's been the hottest team in the Western Conference. But these records mean nothing. Dallas, right, had the best record in the Western Conference. We talked about where they are, and Winnipeg is 1-1 with Colorado going into tonight.
No, exactly. In Colorado, like I said before, I don't trust Gorviev. You saw his performance in Game 1. It was horrendous. He allowed an awful goal tonight. Tyler Toffoli would be on the sideline. So Colorado, they've been really pushing Winnipeg, but if they don't get deep enough goaltending where they're not letting 3 or 4 goals in a night, you can't win like that.
I'm going to get final sports thoughts from everybody in a second, but I want to ask you, Randy, one more question. I want to go back to 2 more questions. I want to go back to the Utah reception. That's my last question. But my first question, part of that is, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, if they don't win this series once again against Boston, which is a common theme, what happens there with the front office?
I don't know. They already cleaned house in the front office last year. Dubas left.
You get the feeling there that they're never satisfied. It's a franchise that just has won 1 playoff series in 20-plus years. And John Tavares, we spoke about it last week, and Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. These guys are supposed to be, everybody talks about, McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins and Edmonton, but at least they've been to a conference final. This core has 1 playoff series to show for it, and going on 6 years. And Matthews has been in the league, 8 now? And he's got 1 playoff series victory. Marner's been there, 7?
Well, I think for Toronto, the big thing going to be if they don't win this series, Mitch Marner needs a new contract. he's out. He's in a year or two. If you really want to help Austin Matthews win a championship, you need goaltending and defense. This team has shown they've
never had that. They've never had that. Freddie Anderson goes to Carolina, and he's what they hoped for in Toronto. And
I think he was that in Toronto, Tom. He was that in Toronto. The fact that the team was so bad defensively.
That was the main point. And I'm going to get one more hockey thought, which is the Utah situation. But before I do that, one of our buddies from the TSF Takes, Mr. Scooby Sony, says, "What's up, guys? Just got home from my first day at new job." By the way, congratulations on the new job. Let's hope it's as successful as your appearances here on Sportzwire Radio. I know certainly many of our listeners miss you. We have 130 of them out there. Great draft so far. We spoke a lot about the draft. We spoke about the Jets. We spoke about the Buffalo Bills. We spoke about the Broncos, the Falcons, the 49ers. We spoke about all that stuff here, Scooby, and we definitely miss you, but congratulations on that job. And we definitely know that you're with us in spirit. And thank you for all you do. So I want to ask you this, Randy. Were you surprised about the reaction that I guess, was it called the Utah hockey team's players got in Utah? Because that was like, that was crazy. Did you see some of that where all the players, it was like, 10,000 people were there just greeting these players to come on the ice? And what did you make of that situation?
I think it's a great sign for Utah, because the last thing you want is move them to Utah and you're going to have a iffy fan base. I think the fact that 10,000 fans came up, they're excited. They want this thing to work. They're excited to see the players. It gets the team, I think, excited as well, but I think it showed the future of it.
And Andre Tierney goes out and says that it finally was his best day in the NHL. And it was guys were saying, wow, this is like what it feels like to play in the NHL. And that was certainly shots toward the previous owner that they played for. And,
absolutely. The last few with Arizona, I honestly don't know how Shane Doan was able to stay in Arizona that long with all the issues throughout his whole career.
I think he just loved the city, and he's their one player that, he was their player.
All these other players, just hearing this, feeling this constantly. And I think for them, just seeing this, it might be a breath of fresh air, saying, you know what, the fact that we have a strong fan base, we're going to have people coming, hopefully it can be stable.
And the owner wants to spend money there. They're talking about they have obviously the ability to get a draft pick very high. And, it was a team that, was competitive the first half of the regular season. And, they've got some young players there. You got Clayton Keller still. And, you certainly could be a team that maybe is, I don't know if they're a playoff team, but they're a team that's going to be competitive, I'm sure.
Exactly. And this reminds me a lot of Winnipeg when they came back with the Thrashers, but they had much more work to do than the Thrashers.
Well, this team I think is a little bit more ahead in the rebuild. I think
they're much more ahead. They already have a lot of good pieces, so if they can get it right, they could do something special for this market and get them.
Yeah, and I think them going into a stadium or an arena that is going to be where they're going to play in front of fans, they're going to have obviously support that they haven't had. That might give them a jolt that they didn't have in Arizona. And Arizona's obviously again, they're not a new franchise. The Coyotes, the Coyotes are still keeping the record books. They're keeping the name. They're only inactive for the whole thing's bizarre. The Utah they're technically, but they're not an expansion team. They're sort of a new team, but they're not an expansion team. And Arizona, if they come back, are not an expansion team. They're an inactive team. And the records stay in Arizona, and Utah has to start from the whole thing's bizarre. But the owner there, obviously, Ryan Smith owns the Jazz in the NBA, and obviously he's going to look to have more success with the Utah hockey team than he's had with the Jazz. They're going to the Delta Center. So they're going to make some renovations there possibly to fix some of the obstructed view seats. Have like a Barclays Center situation, though, short term. They're going to be in a 16,000-seat arena, but 4,000 seats are obstructed. But 12,000, last I checked, is more than 4,600 at Mullet Arena. So they're going to automatically get a huge jolt there. And Utah is going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on. Scooby would like to say good series, Randy, though, but he's saying that because he's a Rangers fan. And of course he's going to say it's a good series.
I got no hard feeling. Listen, I said Rob last week, the same to Scooby, made the best team win. I knew this was an uphill battle. And listen, the Rangers have just been, other than Matt Rempe, listen, the Rangers have been really good. They haven't given Washington much to work with. Today was probably the one game the Capitals could have made an impact with 6 power power play, but the Rangers penalty kill did the job today.
Well, that's what we say all the time in the playoffs. If you don't make teams play on a power play, 5-on-5 is very hard to score. And so if power plays don't work out and you can't cash in, that's why you could be going to the golf course here. And teams like the Capitals, the Islanders, and the Lightning could be going on to the golf course. If they're on the golf course, make sure you listen to us on Sportzwire Radio. Let me get everybody a final sports thought, and then we'll move on to final thoughts. So let me go with you, Chris, first. Is there anything sports-wise you want to bring up before we get to closing thoughts that we missed tonight?
I'm just looking forward to the rest of the draft. I'm hoping the Jets could get a developmental quarterback at some point. It would be nice because obviously Aaron Rodgers is not going to last longer than a year or two, right? So hopefully they could get a young quarterback that they could develop behind him. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the draft. Any more surprises,
Yeah, obviously Saturday and Sunday's drafts, again, there's still a lot to be looked for. And, this is still, not like the other drafts in sports. You could still find a player here. We see it all too often. Robin, I'll ask it for you. Is there a story or anything you want to share before we move on for the evening that we missed?
I want to talk about wrestling for a second.
Well, you should have said something an hour ago, but, Alan's the wrestler, by the way. Alan Michaels is a wrestler.
Quick.
All right, let's go for it.
Now I haven't kept up with the wrestling except for what you guys said, but
right.
I think I told you that my friend's wife is Hulk Hogan's niece. So we used to go free to the Meadowlands all the time to see wrestling. What was it? WWF then, right?
WWF, yep. WWF, yeah.
So we used to get to go backstage too. So I got to see a lot of the old time guys.
Well, if you want to go backstage to Tennessee Backyard Wrestling shows, Alan Michaels is a major player there, and he could hook you up,
I know. But I just wanted to say that. I was thinking about that before.
We should have brought it up an hour ago. We had Chris Craven, he was an independent wrestler. In fact, he wrestled. Little known fact, he wrestled on a SmackDown taping, and he wrestled on a Raw taping in two dark matches back in the middle 2000s. So you should have brought it up to him. He would have had your head off there for 10 minutes.
Just wanted to mention it real quick. So that's all I got
that was a good story. I like that was a good one. And Joe Dell wants to say, I say this every year. Jets need an offensive line. They've never had a great line. And every year they've been very good. That's why Namath needed pantyhose. Well, I'm going to not talk about pantyhose with Joe Namath because I'm a sports show and I do have kids that listen to Sportzwire Radio. I love you, Joe Dell, but I'm going to certainly let Joe Namath have the pantyhose. I do have kids that listen to Sportswire because I get messages from people in the UK. My kids listen to you. So thank you very much, though, Joe Dell. And I'll certainly maybe talk about pantyhose if some woman was wearing them, but I'm not going to do that here on this platform because we are a family station. But thank you, Joe Dell, for the interesting comments. But Big T, I'm going to certainly hope that you move away from that and talk about if there was something you wanted to share, whether it's LeBron, maybe he's going to the golf course here after the Lakers get eliminated here soon. The Phoenix Suns could be joining. Maybe the Philadelphia 76ers are making you look bad about your New York Knicks going deep into the playoffs this year. I mean, anything else you want to say that we haven't talked about sports-wise?
No, I was just about to bring it up, man. So last time you guys saw me, I was expecting a New York Knicks sweep. Obviously,
not going to happen, my friend. Not going to happen. No, it's definitely not happening. But
obviously, Joel Embiid did really the unthinkable, man. I mean, 50 points. I mean, he's either fed up or he's just tired of losing. Regardless, I may still be crazy to think, even after the game we just saw, still think the Knicks come away with it. It may not be a sweep. Still think the Knicks take the series. And that just puts them one step closer to being the conference championship game. Besides that, though, LeBron's in the golf course, no doubt. I said from this jump that they should have completely dodged the smoke with the Nuggets. They haven't won a single game against them. I don't even know how long. The Nuggets absolutely own that franchise, at least as of right now. The Lakers have done everything you can possibly think of, man. They've switched up a game plan night in, night out, switched up defense night in, night out. It doesn't matter. The Nuggets are going to beat them boys 9 times out of 10 every single time they play.
And obviously the Nuggets, for the champions for a reason, and the Lakers, obviously, again, it's a core that's probably seen better days. Other series of note, Orlando got back into the series yesterday, and we're obviously Indiana, Milwaukee. Milwaukee's a team I think that's under a lot of pressure. That'll be interesting to watch as well. OKC. we'll see what happens with them. And the Knicks, look, it's all about Game 4. Knicks win Game 4. They're 3-1, but Philly could still make that a series. They still got the one player that matters in that series. Keep that in mind. Joel Embiid still have him, and Boston and Miami is also going on. Obviously, I don't know who to root for in that series, actually. I don't know who to root for. But, okay, good deal there. Alan Michaels, I put up your Instagram there, so if people want to stay trendy with you, they can certainly do that by, seeing your page and see that you are an independent artist who's now working for Tennessee Backyard Wrestling. And so you may want to update that. But is there one sports story that you'd like to talk about that we've missed before I get to Randy and let him get a thought before we all say final thoughts and say goodbye tonight?
Yeah, I think let's go ahead and talk about the weekly Kirk Cousins slander. This week
you did that already, though, with the draft.
No. It should be a little bit easy this week. Imagine a team being so not 100% of what they did that they go out and draft a 25-year-old rookie quarterback. I mean, that just speaks volumes about what they think about Big Kirko over there in Atlanta.
I want to say, Angela wants to say it was a great show, guys. She listened to the whole thing. She said, thank you. Thank you, Angela, for tuning in. Angela's on Twitter. Follow Angela if you're on Twitter. I don't keep up with all the tweets because there's so many tweets, but, if you like Angela, she listens to us, make sure you give her a follow. But, you slander Kirk Cousins more than you slandered Atomic Titan on the Staying Trendy show last night. You know that, right?
That is so true, Mike.
See, I'm great, Big T. That's why maybe I'm rooting for you in the eating contest coming up on May 24th, 10 p.m. You're a good man, Big T. You're a good man.
I could at least stomach a conversation with Atomic Titan. I think I'd do.
Everybody on Sportswire. James Taylor was knocking Atomic Titan last night. All the guys in DKW were knocking him, and you had a chance to hit one out of the park, and you didn't.
Hey, it is what it is.
You did slander Kirk Cousins more than you slandered Atomic Titan yesterday, though.
Yeah, I really don't like Kirk Cousins at all. I don't think he's a likable guy. I don't like to play on the field.
Because he did you wrong in fantasy football. That's why.
No, I just don't like the dude. There's just something about him.
If he came to Lafayette, if he came to obviously headquarters, do you think that you would still hate him if he came down to see the guys and see you in the locker room? Yes. Big T, I think he's lying. He's lying, right? He's definitely lying. He'd be the first one. No. He'd be the first one in line saying, "Do you want to come on the Staying Trendy show?"
He wouldn't set a foot on the Staying Trendy show.
Okay, well, you know what, Alan Michaels, you are, Alan Michaels, I love you. You are a really interesting guy. I tell you what, you certainly are a man. Maybe I got to get down to Lafayette. You got to bring me on the Staying Trendy show. I'm sure the whole locker room, half the locker room would like it, the other half wouldn't like it. But you never say never. Never say never there, Alan Michaels. But you certainly gave us some hot takes there. Randy, I'm going to let you have. Is there one more sports story or hockey, whatever it is, you want to share before we say goodbye for the evening?
I just want to talk quickly with the Edmonton Oilers, how McDavid, Hyman, and...
They're on the clock. I agree with you on that. That's an excellent point.
Goal. I think McDavid had already 12 points. Draisaitl 10, 11 points. Bouchard. These guys are just racking up the points here. If they go all the way, McDavid could put 50 points if the Oilers do win the cup. He could be putting up close to maybe 50 points.
Did Gretzky do that in one of the years in the 80s? Did he get 50 playoff points?
Just something. How the guy just scoring at will right now. They're scoring at will is just incredible.
But they were talking about this on the on NHL. If you go to the NHL radio at all, and we know that Draisaitl and McDavid are going to put the points up. It's a matter of they have pressure too. They have to get to a Stanley Cup final at some point. No.
It's cup or bust. I think all year they've been saying it's cup and bust for them this year. I don't think next year can cut it for them. It's they need to win it now.
Is the vibe in Canada finally we're going to get to a Stanley Cup and win it this year, or skepticism is still right now in Canada?
I'm still saying skeptic because there's so many question marks on the teams. Every Canadian team has question marks.
Well, Toronto, I think, has the most question marks right now.
Toronto has so many. Vancouver right now. Could the defense hold up? Thatcher Demko. Winnipeg right now just getting throttled by Colorado. And they have been getting throttled all series so far. They just can't seem to figure it out.
So Edmonton's our best hope?
Edmonton their best hope, but Edmonton goaltending, and if Skinner can't figure it out, they're not going to go anywhere.
Well, I like to see a Canadian team. Since my Islanders are going to the golf course, sorry about this, Chris. I like to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup. So, I figured, give us some more listeners, on Sportswire, because, we do have Canadian listeners out there. We're worldwide. We have listeners in the UK. We have listeners in Australia, a lot of other listeners. So I try to, be diplomatic. And before we get to final thoughts, Shane Davidson, understand that. And Josh was off the air about 20 minutes ago. He's talking about Mr. Allen. So, Mr. Michaels, your boss was here, and Mr. Davidson said, miss you, bro, but he ain't here right now. He left in the comments. So, you should have stayed, Mr. Davidson. You could have spoken with Mr. Allen. But we had a lot of fun tonight. Also, Joe Dell wants to say, no worries, boys and girls. Rangers will bring the cup home to good old NYC.
I disagree, Joe Dell, because I'm going to say this much. I think the Florida Panthers are going to go all the way back to the finals.
Randy? Excellent point, Randy. Excellent point. I think the Rangers. I think the Rangers are going to have a hard time. They're going to have Florida. I think that core, they could win it.
Next round, Carolina and Florida. That's going to be a tough matchup.
I don't think Carolina has the firepower though.
It's going to be a tough matchup, and then I think Boston doesn't have the offense. You look how they're winning their game against Toronto.
And I think the Rangers should get to the conference finals, but I think Carolina has the same problem Boston. Carolina doesn't have the firepower.
They do. They got Jake Gensel this year. I think he's going to be a difference maker.
But they don't have the firepower compared to the Rangers.
But you know what? Freddie Anderson's playing
out of his mind. I knew you were going to counter me and say that their goaltending is playing out of this world. And that goaltending gets you in there.
There'll be a problem.
And final thought before we get to final thoughts. Shane Davidson wants to say this about you, Alan Michaels. Alan Michaels looked a little washed up there in the ring, by the way.
No, never better.
Never, but that's what you see. The backstory is that these guys were feuding once upon a time over in Tennessee Backyard Wrestling, and we never got to see who was the better man. And I think Mr. Davidson might be trying to angle to get that one finished match. I think he's trying to follow up the James Taylor, Anthony Steele deal. But Alan Michaels, obviously, you're focused on other things. You're obviously focused on a lot of other things right now, and you forgot who Mr. Davidson is in TBW, so you forgot about him, right?
We might have to have a sit-down interview, Tom. I have to do it between Alan Michaels and Shane Davidson.
We've had him on, actually. We've had him on face-to-face, but maybe we'll have to do it again. But actually, I don't think we could do it because Mr. Davidson doesn't work for Mr. Michaels' company currently, so that'd probably be a no-no right now. But that'll be fun. That could be next week's show as a topic. Let's get to closing thoughts. I'm going with you first, Rob Maraska. Rob, I want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? And the floor is yours. By the way, Angela said she misses Scooby. Scooby, unfortunately, got a new job. He cannot no longer be with us for the foreseeable future. He is working from 3 to 11 on Fridays, and that's why we may have to say goodbye to him. DK will be back next Friday, and Justin Gianelli is also a goodbye to us because he also got a new job, and he's working mornings on Saturdays. So we've lost some guys, but we've got some guys back. So, Angela, hope you stay with us. Rob, I turn it over to you now.
Good show, as usual, guys. A lot of fun. Just looking forward for, like you said, the weather to get better in New York because
it's been horrific. Horrific.
We want to see some good baseball. We don't want to see these guys freezing. And
it's ridiculous. I was in a coat on Monday. I was delivering the Staten Island Advance overnight in a coat, and even today wasn't that great. I was walking around the old Staten Island Advance stopping ground this afternoon, which is all rubble now, and it was like 55 degrees out at 4:00 in the afternoon. What's going on?
Oh yeah, that building. It's just rubble.
It's rubble. It's supposed to be a school. It's supposed to be a couple different things, but who knows?
It belongs as rubble. Anyway,
it does. It does. I agree with you on that, Rob. It definitely belongs as rubble. Toilet paper.
Anyway, look for me on Twitter and Facebook with more contests, and the contests I have going on now are Maraska on Twitter, Rob Maraska on Facebook. And I think I'm going to reopen my Instagram too. So
good deal. Yes, Instagram. I have a clip with 1,000 views on Instagram. I have one this week with 1,000. I have one last week with 1,000. And 3 weeks prior to that, I have one with 3,200. And I have one, I think, with Mr. Michaels with like 400. So Instagram, we do have a lot of fans on Instagram. Instagram and Facebook. I have one on Facebook with like 700 a couple of weeks ago. And I have one famously with like 4,000. So Facebook, we do very well on Facebook and Instagram. So I want to say hello to our Instagram and Facebook followers, and I have some really cool guests coming up from Instagram land on. But thank you, Rob, for that. And also want to say hello. I believe I know who this person is. You're going to get some good comments from this person here. That's for you, Big T. We want to say hello to Mrs. Big T. And by the way, Mrs. Big T, I think I'm rooting for Big T to win the eating contest on May 24th because it seems like Mr. Michaels has forgot where he's come from. He forgot about the fact that he didn't challenge Mr. Titan on the show yesterday, staying trendy. He's been going, unfortunately, to me, he's been too far over the top on Kirk Cousins. Now we're rooting for Big T to win this eating contest. So unless Mr. Michaels changes his ways, stay tuned for that. But and by the way, Mrs. Big T, Mama Big T loves hearing that. So we say we love Mama Big T. Chris, I want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you may want to plug, share, say, and fire away.
Tom, thank you very much, guys. Great show as always. I'm with Rob. I'm looking forward to the warmer weather. Tired of the colder weather.
It's terrible.
It's frustrating.
Very frustrating.
Go to the rest of the draft this weekend. And then the Yankees, hopefully they can start scoring runs. Maybe when the weather warms up, their bats will warm up. So, but Sharman and I will be back probably Wednesday.
Okay.
Draft.
And I have your show for this week that I'm going to play as well.
All right, cool. And then Monday I should be with Patrick, and we'll do a Talking Rivals. And
I'm looking forward to that.
Yankees Red Sox.
Looking forward to that. Obviously, nothing like Yankees Red Sox, especially if we get some warmer weather and meaningful baseball. And everybody in the American League East is neck and neck right now. So that's a good sign. You can follow Chris CP7NY on all platforms on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. Going with you next, Randy, for some closing thoughts. I got double duty with you. Love that. We're going to see you, obviously, always here Friday nights. And Randy, hopefully we'll talk a little more hockey next Friday. I doubt our teams will be alive, but you'll tell me maybe otherwise. But I give you the floor, and I'm looking forward to that episode with my old friend Kimberly Moisa. Kimberly Moisa was one of the first people I ever interviewed. So
thanks, Tom. So I would just with episode with Kimberly. This is an old episode I just gave you back in February, so we won't have a new episode.
Oh, okay. I was like, you got new with Kimberly. I'm like, oh wow. Okay.
We'll have a new one hopefully soon in the next few weeks. This weekend with hockey wise, the big games for the NHL, elimination games. Either you tie the series or you go down 3-0 or 3-1. So it's a huge weekend for the NHL playoffs, and on the wrestling fact, we got the draft, finishing up the draft on Monday. Then next Saturday we got Backlash in France. So
1:00 Eastern time. So Alan Michaels, hopefully you're watching from the TVW locker room at 1:00 Eastern time. I can't say that, right? You should just forget about that comment, right? If you'll be in the locker room at 1:00 on next Saturday, I'll move off that kind. Maybe I'll never mention that you were going to be taping a show next Saturday. But be that as it may, follow Randy Dillon on Instagram and Twitter at Randy Dillon, DHILLON. Big T, you've certainly become maybe my betting man to win this eating contest on May 24th, 10 p.m. Eastern time. So I'm going to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Mama is watching, so certainly make sure it's an impactful closing thoughts as you always do. And fire away, my friend.
Man, as usual, obviously love being on here. Another great show again. Even though we lost some people, still made it work. And
no, we got 135 people out there watching. Don't trust me. Fridays, we're still here. We're not going anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. I'm the one that if I leave, then the show's over. But I'm not leaving anytime soon. So good news for you. You're in luck.
I think I don't give too much praise to really many other teams. I would say, like, obviously I'll like picks, things like that. But one thing in particular that I've liked over the last couple of seasons, man, Howie Roseman, the general manager for the Philadelphia Eagles, that guy is not scared to do anything, man. If there's a price tag on it,
Eagles have been so fascinating these past couple of years. They're so fascinating.
Yeah. And no disrespect to Nate Wiggins, no disrespect to Kool-Aid McKinstry. The two cornerbacks they got this year are going to be the best cornerbacks in the draft, the best cornerbacks in the NFL out of this class. And they made absolutely amazing plays by trading up with these guys, man. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, Philadelphia Eagles, it's funny. A couple of weeks ago, Mr. Michaels was knocking him, and now a couple of weeks later, they look like they're going to be back, and they seem to have a plan. Trust the process, as one of my old buddies used to say. So, Big T, good stuff there, and we love our TSF Takes group, and follow them on TikTok especially. Over 1,000 followers. So join them, and we love them Cerna fellas. We love those fellas, but officially each week, Alan Michaels, we've made you the man to give the closing thoughts for the final word. We used to have this guy who was a brute force. He was a big guy like you, and we would let him certainly close out tonight's show. But now we've done it in honor to let you replace those mansions, because obviously you're a lot more well-known. You're a lot more popular. You're obviously a trendsetter, even though you really didn't do much to Mr. Titan yesterday on episode 160. But while we didn't certainly save the best for last, we saved the biggest for last. And the closing thoughts of a main eventer, and certainly a man that is back home where he belongs in TBW, and he is also home here on Sportswire Radio. And I'm proud to call you a friend, proud to call you a close friend. In many ways, you have replaced the brute force. I think you and I connect like that brute force guy and myself did. So I see a lot of you in that, and I think obviously we're a lot more closer because of our wrestling ties, which makes things a lot more natural. So I turn it over to you for the final thoughts of Friday's show for this week. Alan Michaels, stay trendy with us and give us the final words tonight.
Gotcha, Tom. I gotta mention one thing before I get to my thoughts, and that's Rob Morosco. This is the first week. This is the first week in about 3 weeks that you haven't mentioned a death in the sports community. Rob Morosco is the Grim Reaper of New York sports. If you see Rob Morosco on Sportswire, somebody's gone, man.
Well, at least it wasn't the wrestling world, At least it wasn't Rob saying, "Oh, well, I remember this guy in like 1982 and he was dead,"
But it's the first week it hasn't happened in a minute. But
well, at least Alan. At least Rob doesn't know us from the backyard wrestling world, where usually on Sportswire there'll be somebody to come on here, maybe a one-time wrestler or two that worked in the company you worked for, and they would actually, in their own way, basically prepare the death of a fellow backyard wrestler they didn't like. So at least Rob doesn't do that from that vantage point,
Yeah. Yeah, but other than that, it was a great show. I'm really excited. The draft was great. There was some questionable moves, some crazy moves, some things that we couldn't foresee. But that's the greatness of the NFL draft. I mean, the NBA draft is pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm not.
Yeah, but it's only 2 rounds, and the first round is what it is, and the second round, who really makes it out of the second round and plays?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The NFL draft is just like the marquee event. I mean, you see so many crazy things happen, crazy storylines. I'm just super excited to see how these rookies turn out. I'm always a big fan of the rookie class every year because, in our fantasy league, in the TSF Fantasy League, we have a keeper round in the draft. And my keeper last year was Sam Laporta. So I got me a quality starting tight end for me already on the board this year. So, I'm scouting these rookies now to see who's going to be my keeper for next year,
Are you still going to be able to scout now that you're back in the ring?
Oh, yeah. I can do it all. I'm the trendsetter. I keep a head task on everything.
That's true. Do you have the glasses on when you're doing the final, obviously picks for your fantasy team? You putting those glasses on like you did yesterday in Lafayette?
Oh, I got the glasses on 24/7, except for now, it's a dark room. I don't want to be a D-bag.
Well, I don't want to, well, I think you're referring to the man that obviously you wrestled yesterday who did that when he was on the air famously a few months ago. But I think, Alan, we've said a lot. I want everybody to follow you, Alan Michaels, on all of the platforms, Instagram, Threads. Also, check you out on TikTok and also TSF Takes Group. And obviously, it was a lot of fun. I want to thank everybody here for tuning in. I will be back here tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern time, with the Cyclone, Jason Storm. I was supposed to have your old friend, Alan Michaels, Xavier Thorne on the show, but I can't make the time, so I have to reschedule Xavier Thorne. And I have some other guests coming on that you'll be curious of, I'm sure, during the week, including Mr. Jack Spade Monday night. He'll be here in the house, and I hope you tune in. But I want to thank everybody here that was with us. I want to thank Coach Chris Craven, who was here with us earlier in the evening. Shane Davidson was here. Also want to say thank you for your services when it comes to Scooby Stoney, and also, of course, Justin Gianelli. Joe Dell would like to say great show. Thank you for that. I want to thank Ethan Sorensen. I want to thank everybody, Angela Pink out there in the world, because all sports matters, all wrestling matters here on Sportswire Radio. We were joined by Randy Dillon of the Hockey Fan Chat, also our senior wrestling analyst, Chris Bezea, senior NFL analyst, also host of Liftoff Jets Talking Rivals, Rob Maraska, contest guy, also a man that remembers Hulk Hogan in the Meadowlands back in like 87. He was there, free seats. Big T, of course, the man that is the odds-on favorite to win the first ever Sportswire Radio competitive eating contest from the TSF Takes Group. Of course, the man that made his triumphant, well, not so triumphant return, but made his return, nevertheless, to Tennessee Backyard Wrestling with the host of the Staying Trendy Show and also the trendsetter, Alan Michaels. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, and your voice of all wrestling. And if, again, you're on Sportswire Radio, you're going back to your regular scheduled programming. And if you're on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, I'll see you at 9 o'clock Eastern Time for the Cyclone, Jason Storm, to be inducted into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, and also the owner of ROW. Until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. All I'm number one. Double